Yep, we're on. Okay. I'd like to call this meeting to order, a regular meeting of the Committee of the Whole on Wednesday, October 25th at 6:30 PM in the Germantown Village Hall Boardroom, and also can be accessed via WebEx. This meeting has been given public notice in accordance with sections 19.83 and 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes in such form that will apprise the general public and news media of subject matter that is intended for consideration and action. Roll call shows all Committee of the Whole members present, except for Trustee Myers, who is excused, and Trustee Pieper, who is joining us via WebEx. Next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes from the October 24th, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting.
Move approval is presented.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to approve the minutes? No discussion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the 2024 wrap-up and property tax levy with item A, wrap-up departmental review. The first department that we're going to start with as a review tonight would be dispatch services. And we have representation from the county. I believe Sheriff Schultes is here. And he's here to talk about the dispatch and the shared services. So Sheriff, if you'd like to come forward to the podium here, that would be terrific. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much. I sincerely appreciate the invite. So, but before I start, I just wanted to say just a couple of words about 2 evenings ago. I just want to let you know that the sheriff's office is just holds thoughts and prayers are out for the all your public safety personnel, your school district, and your citizens. And just know that the sheriff's office is here to assist any way that we can moving forward. I think your don't quote me exactly, but I think your mission statement is excellence in policing is for the police department. And from what I know, that standard was not only met, but it went higher than that during that event. So it makes me kind of proud to wear the same badges that all law enforcement does in Washington County.
Thank you.
So just immediately to my right is also Captain Stacer. He is the undersheriff for the sheriff's office. He runs our countywide radio system and also our dispatch center. So if we have any technical questions, I might defer to the resident expert. So I've been with the sheriff's office since 1991, and I'm currently in my second term as your sheriff. And I say your sheriff because my public safety commitment is just not out in the county. It really is to all of the 137 county residents, including those in Germantown. So really your constituents are also my constituents. Everyone from Germantown to Farmington to Wayne to Erin and all the municipalities in between. So this is a difficult decision for you to contemplate, and I fully acknowledge that. You're tasked with deciding the advantages and disadvantage of partnerships with the sheriff's office for your emergency dispatching. There's certainly advantages and disadvantages. I think your public safety staff did a very good job of indicating the advantages of having your own dispatch center, and I wouldn't contest any of them. There's clearly some advantage to that. Particularly from my point of view is the ability to have somebody in your office during the hours that your non-clerical staff are not working. So it's certainly something to consider. But I do need to say something so that you hear it and it's said publicly, is that should you decide to partner with the sheriff's office, I want to assure you that the level of public safety dispatching of your public safety assets, police, fire, EMS, that will not change. We're committed to maintaining the high standards that the Germantown Police Department currently has in place. I would also like the board to know, and maybe you do, or maybe you don't, that this is not a push from the sheriff's office at all. I have not been soliciting business. I've been contacting the local police chiefs and fire chiefs and say, hey, come, we'll do this for you. I am always open to doing those partnerships, and but I've always said that it's a local decision for the local boards like yourself to make. But I will say that should you decide to go in the direction of the sheriff's office, that this is a partnership. It's not a takeover of the sheriff's office at all. It's working together. Now, having said that, the pendulum is very clearly swaying in the United States and Wisconsin of a more centralized type of model. All you have to do is look at virtually all of our neighbors, from Ozaki to Sheboygan, Fond du Lac, Dodge, Waukesha, and even portions of Milwaukee County. And there's a reason for it. A lot of it has to do with money. All of the state grants moving forward are going to be for the main dispatch center in the county. And a vast majority of that money is used for consolidation projects and next generation 911. If you haven't heard that term before, I'll explain what that is in just a little bit. But I thought maybe what might be a little helpful is just to give you kind of an overview of what the sheriff's office, our dispatch center currently is. So as I mentioned, we are the main dispatch center in the county. In the end of next year, 2024, we will be the primary dispatch for about 85,000 county residents. There are currently 5 dispatch consoles in our sheriff's office, with the ability to expand up to 9. We're going to be adding another 2 this coming year to bring the total consoles up to 7, but with being able to add another 2 to that. We're in the process of implementing that next generation 911 technology. And what that is the most advanced, most reliable 911 calling infrastructure that's currently available. What it is, it's going to include text to 911. Eventually, it's going to include video sharing of from the scene into the dispatch center. And what it has, it's called ESSINet. And what it is basically a bunch of pipelines that are multiple different internet providers. So you have the reliability of backup upon backup for the actual calling infrastructure. None of those functions exist in Washington County as of today. But what I will say is that we already have all of the next generation 911 infrastructure. The equipment is already installed in our sheriff's office. We're just not hooked up to that ESSINet yet. We're still on the old analog phone lines, but eventually we'll be transitioning to the ESSINet. We also have full emergency medical dispatching. We have in-depth GIS mapping that has phase 1 and phase 2 locators for cellular locators. We have a quality assurance program. And if you're not familiar with it, and the police or the fire chief probably could speak to it a little better than I can, but if there's any major fire within Washington County right now, it doesn't matter if it's in the village of Germantown or in the town of Wayne, the sheriff's office is the primary MABUS dispatch center. So it's a mutual aid box alarm system that major fires are run through the sheriff's office currently. And if you're not aware, and this is kind of been a little bit of misleading, but all 911 cell phone calls are routed through the sheriff's office. They're not necessarily handled by the sheriff's office, but they're routed through, and I'll explain that in just one second. So obviously our center is staffed 24/7. We have authorized staffing of, I think it's 17 and a half dispatchers right now, 3 supervisors. And we're currently adjusting our staffing minimums for another consolidation project we're working on with the city of Hartford. But I can tell you that we never ever have 1 dispatcher working. We're probably moving towards not even having a 3-man minimum on even the slower shifts, and maybe even 4 if I remember correct. We dispatch currently right now for 14 fire and rescue agencies, 7 full-time police departments, and about 4 part-time police agencies. And as I stated earlier, we're currently in a transition mode with the city of Hartford. We're taking on their emergency dispatching. Right now, we're doing their third shift, but eventually, maybe the first or second quarter of next year, we'll be doing their dispatching 24/7. Some of the operational stats for you, if you're a stats person, just to give you a flavor of the activity that goes through a county dispatch center, is that in 2021, our call center handled 92,000 phone calls. 22,000 of those were 911 calls, and about 48,000 of those calls were administrative inbound calls that were answered. And it's called NENA. It's the National Emergency Number Association. It's kind of a 911 association. They establish national standards on how quickly a 911 call should be answered. And their standard is that 90% of all 911 calls should be answered in 15 seconds or less. And 95% of all 911 calls should be answered in 20 seconds or less. So our agency standard is that the emergency phone 911 calls should be answered in 2 rings or less. So it's obviously well within that NENA standard. And in fact, we also hold that standard to our administrative lines. And the reason we do that is alarm companies, medical pendant companies, and even 911 transfers from all over the country can come in on administrative lines. So we highly stress, particularly one of our administrative lines has to be answered as quickly as our 911 calls. So the next thing I'd like to just briefly talk about is the relationship that the sheriff's office has with Germantown, both police and fire department. And I said partnerships early, and those aren't just words to me. So besides the day-to-day backing up of officers where your police officers are helping our deputies and vice versa. And critical incidents, like unfortunately we had, 2 nights ago, I had 3 dozen of my staff down here for that. But besides those types of things, Germantown Police Department has personnel assigned to our drug unit. They have by far the most municipal officers on our multi-jurisdictional SWAT team. Positions such as negotiators, tactical operators, snipers, and even 2 team leaders. And those individuals, when they're working outside the boundaries of the village of Germantown, they're working under my authority. And that's how much trust I have in the personnel that Chief Snow runs. A little bit of trivia for you, and I don't think anyone in this room knows this, but after I was working for the Sheriff's Department for 3 or 4 years, I actually took out an application to become a police officer in Germantown. If you don't know, most of my county roots are in Germantown on Country Air Drive. So I took the application out, never turned it in. But it just goes to show you the admiration that I have for this community and for the police department. But I want to say that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who the sheriff is. A project like this is really more about the office of the sheriff and the commitment that the office of the sheriff has to public safety throughout Washington County. I've heard a lot of discussions, and justifiably so, about the need for increased public safety personnel in the village of Germantown, and I concur 100%. I know at least the ratio of sworn officers to 1,000 personnel. It's kind of the national standard. And I know what that ratio is for the village. And it's Chief Snow can use some help. I don't know the same type of standard for the fire service, but I can tell you I listen to their radio calls every day. I know how busy they are, not only assisting on calls in the village, but even calls in Menomonee Falls. They're extremely busy as well. But what I'd like to say is that, and I'm stating the obvious, that your dispatchers here in Germantown, they are dedicated professionals. They're selfless. They are doing a job that many can't do, many won't do. I say when I sit down with all of our new employees, and when I sit down with new dispatchers, I tell them that they have the hardest job in our agency, and there's no doubt in my mind that is the toughest job. So having said that, what I'd just like to impress upon you is, I think it's important that whatever direction you decide to go, that you keep the growth of the community in mind when you're talking about your dispatch center. It's not for me to tell you how to do that. You can partner with us. You can do it on your own. But I think it's just very important that you know that the growth that is happening in this committee and community, and you can't forget about our dispatchers. And I can illustrate that point with the Next Generation 911 that I talked about. So when that's implemented in the village here, you will have the ability to geolocate, to geofence all of the wireless 911 calls. So the sheriff's office would not have to handle them anymore. So when I said that the sheriff's office, handles or routed through, that would not need to happen with Next Generation 911. So that means your dispatch center could receive text to 911, it could receive video calls. And what I don't think a lot of communities know, it is very misleading to say the sheriff's office handles those calls. We don't. Germantown handles their own wireless 911 calls. But what I will say is that oftentimes you don't just get one 911 call on an incident. You'll get multiple calls, 5, 10, 15, dozens. And so what our sheriff's office does is we triage a lot of those. We'll answer them, we'll determine nature of the call, where it's located. If it's a duplicate call and there's no new information, we'll document, but we don't ship that call down here to Germantown. We don't want to overburden a dispatcher. And I'm not sure a lot of people know that. So that's what kind of gives me a little bit of pause with the full implementation of Next Generation 911. So even the hardest working dispatchers, they're still human. I could argue there's some elements to them that are superhuman, but the reality is a single dispatcher is not able to answer multiple phone calls at the same time, not able to answer both police, fire, and EMS transmissions, page out EMS and fire at the same time, and provide real comprehensive emergency medical dispatching. And when I say emergency medical dispatching, the most prolific examples are a CPR and a Heimlich maneuver where the dispatchers will walk them through CPR. And we just did that twice last week. And so it really is not fair when you have a single dispatcher working to expect them to do all of that. So that's why I just say whatever you decide, you need to address the growth that you're going to experience. One of the projects that the sheriff's office and Germantown, the village, the police department, and the fire department are working on is migrating your ProPhoenix public safety software onto the sheriff's office multi-juris ProPhoenix public safety software. Same software, just different licensing. That allows a little better communication between the villages and the rest of the squads in the county. If you are contemplating the consolidation, that software is necessary. But even if you decide to maintain the status quo, there are some huge advantages to having that software in place. I've been authorized by the county to expend, I think it's like $36,000 to make sure that happens. But what it does is it saves some infrastructure on your end, some IT costs in your end. But the huge advantage to the coppers and the villages and the towns is that we can see what each others are doing. The other advantage that I'm going to very cautiously say is that software would allow the sheriff's office to do a certain amount of emergency dispatching for the village. We'd be on the same software system. But I want to be very, 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 very cautious when I say that can't be a staffing model that's relied on. The staffing that we have in place is for who we primarily dispatch for. That's what our infrastructure is designed for. And I'm not sure, as a population of Germantown is like 20,000. I mean, I think your equalized value is approaching $4 billion. And to have our staff try to take that on at a moment's notice, we could do it very short term, but certainly not as a matter of routine. The last aspect I'd like to talk about is the money part of it. It's not all about money to me. From and I talked about the grants that are only available to the sheriff's office moving forward. And I'm sure there are some cost savings for the municipality in terms of personnel costs. And I think those are the kind of numbers that you've been struggling with. Like what exactly is that exact number? And there's currently some benefits written to the state law with revenue sharing, innovation fund, and the ability for you to retain that tax levy money. But I'd like to point out two cost items that I haven't heard discussed much. And the first was that growth that I'm telling you that you're going to have to address at some point. And then the other for that next, and especially if you go to that next generation 911. But there's also a lot of, I haven't heard much discussion at all about the actual infrastructure costs of running the dispatch center on an annual basis. So I'd just like to go through a couple of the figures that we spend on an annual basis, and specifically the next generation 911 that I indicated, we bought all the hardware and everything's in place, all bought through a state grant. But that we spent this year $365,000 on, and that's for the text to 911, the call handling equipment, the logging recorder, that SCNet, the pipeline of infrastructure that will be coming in. Other things to consider, and these are capital things that I'm not saying you have to do this every year, but it's stuff that the sheriff's office budgets for, because it's technology, it changes, and you have to replace the stuff. It's just how it goes. But every new radio console, I think Germantown has two or three of them, I think. But those are $70,000 a piece. The call handling equipment for each console is $44,000 a piece when you buy that. We're in the process of adding our consoles and replacing some of the furniture we'd like to in our original bullpen. The furniture for the console is $30,000 a piece when we have to replace that. There's about $4,000 in computers and monitors for every console. And then the annual costs that are recurring every year, our maintenance for the consoles, for each console is $1,800 a year. The 911 call handling maintenance for every console is $4,200 for every position. EMD certification, you happen to use the same vendor we do. That's minor. That's $1,800 a year. And then the SCNet connection, that pipeline that I talked about, the state is picking up the cost for the county. I have no idea what costs they're going to pass on to municipalities that have their own dispatch center. That's an unknown right now. And the very last thing I'd like to say is that there are two distinct models to how centralized dispatch centers are run. One is it's a separate county entity. Sometimes it's run by the county executive. Sometimes there's a governing board. That's how Waukesha is run, and I think maybe Fond du Lac. The other counties, Dodge, Sheboygan, Ozaki, are run by the sheriff's office. Some have a governing committee, others don't. I don't object to either way. The only thing that I would encourage any municipality that's contemplating consolidation is that, frankly, ask the Washington County Fire Chiefs Association. I asked the Washington County Law Enforcement Executive Group, that's the police chiefs, and just quite frankly ask them, are you satisfied with the sheriff's office? And I say that because I know what their answer is going to be. The sheriff's office is very responsive. We understand we're providing a customer service to the municipalities, and we give our supervisors institutional authority to make decisions. And sometimes less bureaucracy is better, and that really helps. Two ways that we're trying to even improve that more so, because we're taking on Hartford, I mentioned earlier, is at the end of the police chiefs meeting, I'm going to have an agenda item where we can talk about updates in the dispatch center, if there's any questions or concerns, just to kind of formalize that process. We do that already with the fire chiefs. We meet with the fire chiefs every quarter, and we just do it. We've always done it with the fire chiefs because it's a bigger group, and so it's easier just to talk to everyone. But I think I just wanted to formalize it a little more with the individual police chiefs, just to have the same kind of format for them. The other thing that we plan on doing is adding a third shift supervisor in the dispatch center. We have first and second shift covered right now. I think there's a tremendous value to having, if a municipality has an issue, that they know they can actually pick up the phone and talk to somebody. And like I said, those supervisors have organizational authority to make the change and deal with it right away. So I think that's very, very important. So in closing, I just want to say that whatever direction the village decides to move, it needs to be a solution that's right for you. I have always been an advocate for home rule, and you guys need to run things the way you think it should be run. This is absolutely no different. My very, very public recommendation to you, though, is that you really, really need to make sure that you move to next generation 911. If you have your own dispatch center, you don't want to become an island of inferior technology, and you need to account for growth in your dispatch center, whether that's for population, whether it's for the next generation 911. But whatever you decide, the sheriff's office stands ready to assist. So I'm sorry to ramble on, but I thought you just needed to hear my perspective on things. If you have any specific questions, the captain or I are more than happy to answer.
Could you answer a few now? It seems like we have hands up. Trustee Kaminsky.
For people who are watching this is a very, hot topic, obviously in Germantown. Could you, probably one of the bigger questions that I've heard is, will the service be as good as it is now? Will the calls be answered? For example, if somebody needs an ambulance, I think I know the answer based on what you've said in my research, but if you could just speak to that, like, will there be any variation or difference in timing when it comes to somebody calling in with dispatch being somewhere else?
Yeah, and that's a very, very valid question. And the simple answer is that we want to maintain the same standards that your organization currently does. The only thing I will say that could streamline things a little bit is that we wouldn't have to transfer those 911 calls anymore, that when we answer them, we just handle them. So there might be a little bit of efficiency gain there. I work with your dispatchers. I hear them every day. They're very, very good. And we want to make sure that if you decide to move towards us, that we maintain that exact standard.
Okay.
Trustee Baum.
The item I haven't heard is, what's the plan? How is this going to be introduced? How is it going to be done? How are we going to transfer over?
Rob, could I maybe come up here and talk about
Did I
that?
jump the gun on that? You're going to
No?
do a speech on it? Okay.
No, it would be a phased in approach. But if you're looking for a timeline that we're able to, because we're working with Hartford right now and we don't have them completely on board. So I need to make sure that everything, just like your village residents here, their city residents are concerned. So I need to make sure that everything goes smooth with that. So it's be very, very difficult with hiring and training to do both of them simultaneously. But maybe I can have Captain Stacer just kind of go over the timeline that would work for us.
So, good evening, I'm Rob Stacer. I'd kind of use the roadmap that we use with Hartford as an implementation plan. The state is releasing additional rounds of grant funding next year. Now, if that roadmap looks like this year, the notice gets sent out in June. You've got 2 months to prepare for it, and the application needs to be submitted August 1st. That opens up a lot of dollars that we don't have to pay at the county level. You don't have to pay at the municipal level. It's coming from the state. And so if we use the Hartford model as a roadmap, we began discussions with Hartford early on. They got city council approval, county board approval. We were able to file that paperwork. And then in the meantime here now, as we're waiting for that grant, we're working behind the scenes. We're conducting the necessary planning, meeting with the police chief and fire chief over in Hartford, just trying to learn their organization. We sent dispatchers over there to sit with them and learn it, and our dispatch supervisors. So again, using that as the same model and kind of using the grant funding timeline as a roadmap. If we started talking and got this ironed out and we're able to include this stuff in the next round of grant funding, the way I'm looking at it is, potentially we could start like a third shift dispatching, kind of like what we're doing, to be a phased in approach. We'd start with third shift and then second shift and then day shift. Third shift would begin sometime in late August of 2024. And then as people got hired, you'd take another shift. So the hiring is a big element too. We're still hiring for Hartford. As the sheriff previously alluded to, our staffing is for what we're doing right now. We don't have any excess capacity. So we're hiring for Hartford. We've got one of the three hired. And we're still hiring for the other two. And we've got to get them through our training schedule and working before we can take the next steps. So our training schedule is about 112 days. So from the time you hire them, training's 112 days before they're out on their own. And we can train two people at a time. We just, we're not so big that we can set a room up where you can train half a
What,
dozen
what is training? Is that somebody, you're gonna take me and train me, or are you gonna take our dispatch people and train them?
Well, if you're 112 days is a raw person off the street, that,
Okay,
a previous dispatcher, you could probably cut that in half or less. If someone that's got dispatch experience, specifically if someone has dispatch experience with the Pro Phoenix software that we currently use, if they're coming from another organization that didn't use that software, that training may be a little bit longer.
okay. So you continue with the plan, how the plan rolls out.
So the plan is just kind of based on the hiring. So if you were to approve this, we would start hiring. Obviously, we've got to get the Hartford dispatchers trained and hired first. But looking at, if the plan got approved, I could start hiring because my training dates would be about April 1st of 2024 would be the first of what we believe would take 6 dispatchers to do this. And then the second hire would be hired on June 10th. And that would complete in September sometime. But I'm thinking that once we got that first one trained up, we could probably roll out the third shift. That's where I come up with in mid to late August of 24.
That we would start on your program, and then that would be a third shift. We're started on third shift in August. When would we be 100% into your program?
Assuming you can hire everybody and everybody makes it through field training. So best case scenario, I'm looking at probably end of May of 25, where you'd have the 6th person hired and trained.
How many dispatch people did you hire from Hartford? Any? Did you
So
bring any
we
of their
did
people
pick
over?
up one prior to the consolidation costs that we had one of them come over, but their consolidation was kind of the timing was right. They were able to, there was people retiring, so they were losing some people through attrition, and the other people, what was left will be kind of put into more administrative positions at the Hartford Police Department. So at the end of the day, of those 3 new positions, we didn't get any Hartford. They'll all be new hires.
Have you had any discussions with our police chief about our dispatch people yet?
About the existing ones?
Yes.
Been very limited. We were more talking about a plan on how we could potentially hire people together to fill spots, and then they would potentially transfer over as county employees. It would be a struggle to hire someone knowing that you wouldn't have a job in 9 months. But if we co-hired them, they'd know that this was the plan and what the transition would be. It would be more apt for them to want to join on.
Okay. If we move forward with that, I think that's something you guys have to do right away, because we have people that are in limbo. They're looking to figure out what's going on with them. I think that's all I've got for right now.
Trustee Hudson.
So I'll be honest, but before I ask my questions, I'm fairly skeptical of this, not because I think it's a bad idea, but because I don't see anything on paper. I don't see a plan. I hear a bunch of words, but that is, and this is no, I need to be able to touch and feel something and to see it on a calendar and to see the project mapped out. And this has been, at least from where I sit, this has been a very short and compressed timeline to make a decision with implications such as this. So as of right now, I'm kind of skeptical, and I'm being very honest.
Mhm.
One of the things that concerns me, and I've actually gone and sat with our Germantown dispatch, and I've actually watched them. I've been privileged to watch them work a little bit. Leaving our police station vacant on third shift with no humans there, should a worst case scenario happen. That concern of mine has not yet been addressed. Is there some way that either one of the two of you can address that concern?
So I can say that Germantown is not the only police department that we dispatch for. There's 7 full-time police departments, including Kewaskum, Jackson, Slinger, and they're all in that same concern.
They are smaller communities, and they are farther away from Milwaukee County than Germantown is. Obviously, we may have a different set of challenges than the village of Jackson does.
Yeah, I don't want this to be adversarial at all. If the village doesn't want to do it, I don't want you to. I want to have willing partners in it. But I completely understand your concerns. I know like the village of Jackson. So all of the police departments have phones that have connectivity right up to the sheriff's office during non-business hours. I think even Jackson has a safe room that you can lock yourself in the lobby. But I think those are all concerns that you really need to direct to the village rather than the sheriff's office. I don't want to answer on behalf of them on those types of questions. Yeah, I'm just saying that I'm more than willing to work with the village.
May I just
Trustee Kaminsky.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because you're on public safety, obviously, and you've talked about this before. So it would be up to us to kind of come up with a solution to cover ourselves for that third shift as opposed to Washington County. What kind of person would that be, and who would we hire for that? And I guess that would be up to the chief and up to our village administrator. And I would think we could come up with a solution to that.
Yeah, and when I talk about the compressed timeline, these are the kind of questions that I would like to have the ability to work through, because frankly, I do think that eventually one day, maybe next year, maybe the year after, consolidation is going to happen. It's clearly the wave of the future. But it's some of these lingering questions out there, like this one, that a well thought out plan would answer. And I think in a moment of panic, somebody will drive, and I know it's happened in the past. They show up at the police station,
Mhm.
and should a worst case scenario happen, we need to be able to solve that problem. And I don't know if we've done that in the 20 days we've started looking at this plan.
Mhm.
These are what my concerns are.
I could totally understand that, but I think the timeline here that we're talking about is rather extended as well.
Year and a half.
Even if we went with this, because we definitely could use the money to hire other police officers, which I think would be awesome. We do have that time frame, I think, that we could work this out, that you would be satisfied, because nothing is going to happen between now and April, essentially, except they're going to learn our system. And so we have that time, we have like a landing pad here. We're coming in for the landing into this. We have time, I think, to maybe get this on paper to show a timeline for you, so you and the committee are satisfied. And at the same time, talk to Chief Snow, who probably already has an idea of how he would cover that third shift with somebody there. But I don't think those are insurmountable. I think, yeah, I mean, I think that they are, you're right, very compressed timeline for sure. But I think that should not scare us off a very good idea that's going to save us a ton of money and allow us immediately to put more boots on the ground and to give Chief Snow what he needs. And we know how much he needs it. Just look at what's happened here this past week, and how professionally that was handled. But at the same time, we need more people like that available because we are near Milwaukee in particular, where stuff's going to happen, because more stuff is happening all the time, for sure. But I don't think there should be a, oh my gosh, I can't move forward because of this. I see it as, let's move forward and solve these questions that Phil has over the next 2 or 3 months as we're going down that runway. I think it's very doable. And I am totally in support of this because I would rather see police on the ground in Germantown while we're resolving these couple of open-ended questions. To me, the biggest thing is transitionally, that it's smooth and we have great people and nobody's complaining anywhere that I've heard. That's important. And also that the calls are answered as efficiently as they are now, because that's what people want. They just want to know somebody's going to show up when they make a phone call. And as long as those two things are covered, I am totally comfortable with this. It is not only the wave of the future, but the future's coming at us really fast here because we're not going to be able to get money to bring things up to date. We probably need improvements by next year, in the next budget cycle, and we're not going to have that money. And at the same time, we're going to be funding a dinosaur where that money could be going into the new system, into moving this to Washington County, and we can get our police officers. It's kind of a win-win in my mind. As long as we can get your questions answered in the short term, I would feel very comfortable with this.
Trustee Nyrider?
Thank you. I have to agree that first of all, I have no reservation moving this to Washington County. And I haven't had any reservation while this has been brought up. And I know it's been short. We haven't had a lot of time to look at it or whatever. But first of all, I know both of these gentlemen here, and I know the quality of the work that they have done in the past and that they're going to do in the future. And if they say that, they're going to make sure that this is handled well, I have complete trust in that. But I think Sheriff Schulteis sold me even more tonight by some of the items that he brought up. And when I look at those and you put that all together, and it shouldn't be just about money, but I think when you talk about growth, and that's what you mentioned, and you look to the future, I don't think, I think we have a job to do to do this if we feel comfortable. And I can see the reservation that Bill has with this a little bit, and that's something that has to be resolved, but I think it can be resolved. But I have one question. One of the, in anything like this, you're dealing with personnel, and you're dealing with dispatchers here, some that have been here a while. What are we talking, a total of 8? 5 dispatchers
We have,
in Germantown?
we have 8 positions, currently 6 are filled.
Okay. And right there, when you're trying to hire, it wouldn't be our burden anymore to worry about that. You're in charge of staffing it up there. So, but of those people that are here, and I don't know their performance, again, do they have some option that they would possibly be employed? And I looked over the agreement here real quickly before the meeting, and I saw something about 3 employees being taken possibly or whatever, or how do you deal with that, and how do you work with the people?
If I could, I can address that first. In the last meeting that we had with the sheriff's office, as well as representatives from the county executive's office, we were talking through the timeline and how to implement this, and how to get the dates down on the calendar, how this is going to work. And one of the concerns that Chief Snow and Chief Delane and I had is that we currently have 2 vacancies out of those 8 positions, and there's a possibility there will be a 3rd vacancy at the end of the year. And with this issue in flux, or even if it just gets delayed, it would be a challenge to try to fill those positions, which are already difficult to fill. So in the course of those discussions, the idea was brought up that if there would be a way to hire 3 individuals to fulfill this role, who would be working in Germantown until the transition takes place, and then would move to the county dispatch when that transition took place. And that's, I put a draft agreement in the packet. I also want to say there's it may take the form of an agreement. It may take the form of a resolution that the village board passes, a resolution the county board passes, but the ideas are there. What we are confirming with the county is whether or not those individuals could be county employees. And the finance director and I had a conversation yesterday with the chief administrative officer from the county, and we did not receive final confirmation by today, which is what I was hoping for, but it indicated that it looks like that is a reasonable solution. So in that case, Chief Snow would be involved with the sheriff's office in hiring those positions. They would work here in Germantown until the transition took place, and then they would move up to Washington County. One other, if I could just comment on the staffing levels, and keeping in mind, the proposal also includes the creation of 4 administrative assistant positions. And in talking with Chief Snow, and I believe he's had some conversations with the dispatchers, that those positions would be offered to the 4 most senior dispatchers. And I think that would be beneficial to the village, because it would be a reason for them to stay here during the transition period instead of moving someplace else. And it may, as the chief gets more time to work through schedules and staffing, help to address some of the other questions about second and third shift and what that might look like.
Worst case scenario, what would happen if, we say, okay, we're going to go ahead with this. And if I remember, Captain Stacer, I think you were saying it would all be implemented by the end of May of 2025.
Put together a time.
Possibly.
Best I could approximately.
Yeah.
You got some people that are gonna wash out of field training, and there's a lot of variables in there, but on paper, assuming everybody makes it following our hiring schedule, May of 25.
What would happen if all of a sudden everybody over there says, oh, the hell with you, I'm quitting, and we're all out the door, and we're sitting with no dispatch here? Is there something in writing or whatever that, the county would support us and help us out in that type of a situation? Hopefully that doesn't happen, but I'm saying worst case scenario.
Well, and in my mind, and Chief Snow might want to comment on that, that was, I think, part of the reason these conversations began, is that, we did have a situation a little bit less than a year ago. We were down to 5 people in our dispatch office, and it is difficult to fill those positions, and you can't run a 24/7 operation with 5 people, at least not for very long. So, and I believe, I don't know a lot of the details, but I think that was part of the Hartford transition, was they lost staffing and were unable to maintain the services there. So they had to turn to the sheriff's office on a little bit more of an emergency basis. So I think what we've been talking about and working out, especially with these 3 positions, and offering the 4 of our dispatchers those administrative assistant positions, is from a risk management perspective, is the least risky way that I can see in moving forward.
You'd also, if that were to happen, you'd also avoid any unemployment situation as well, correct?
That's right.
And the only other thing I'd like to add, so we would see if there are Germantown dispatchers, current dispatchers that would like to work for the sheriff. I can't just say carte blanche. Yeah, they have to go through an interview process, but I can tell you there's a tremendous value to us to have somebody that knows your infrastructure, knows your systems,
Yep.
working for us.
And
I assure you that we would have hired more Hartford dispatchers if they would have been interested. It's just that they were near the end of their career and they could work Monday through Friday and keep the same wage, and I can't blame them for doing that either. But there's a tremendous value for us to integrate the personnel. If we have that opportunity, that includes lateral transfer, and I've worked this out with the county executive of lateral transfers with vacation and pay. So I want to be able to tell you that if the opportunity arises, I'm very interested in that.
That's all I get. And I like to comment about it's a partnership, not a takeover. And I think that's important that we're working together, that we don't see this as the county's coming down here and this is it, guys. It's a partnership. So, and I think there's a good working relationship already, which I think helps as well. So I very much favor this. Thank you.
Trustee Chan Miller?
I have some questions. I just want to get my statistics right before I rifle off some questions. Currently, let's talk about your current situation in Washington County Dispatch. You said you had 3 supervisors, is that correct? And how many dispatchers?
There's 17 and a half, we're authorized for 17 and a half positions. I think we're 2, with the Hartford consolidation, I think we're still trying to hire 2. Is that correct? Okay,
So you have 15 and a half?
correct, yes.
Does that include administrative people?
No, those are dispatchers, not the supervisors, actual dispatchers.
Correct. And then how many administrative people do you have?
In the entire agency,
No, for dispatch.
supervisors, you mean?
No.
We don't have administrative people. We have 3, there's 2 sergeants, captain, and then the 17 and a half authorized dispatchers.
Okay, so you have, let's round it out, 30 people, let's say 3 supervisors in dispatch, and then 17-ish actual dispatchers. 20 people. Thank you. So if I understood you correctly, you have taken on Kewaskum, is that correct?
We've took on Hartford's 3rd shift right now. We've always done Kewaskum.
And you've always done Jackson?
Correct, yes.
And have you always done Richfield?
Yes. We contract with, the Village of Richfield contracts with us for police services. So we've always been their dispatch.
Dispatch, police,
Yes.
everything.
Mhm.
Okay, so Hartford has how many people? 8,000, thank you.
No, they have
12?
13,000,
13 to 15,000.
15,000.
Okay, so let's call it 13. So 13,000. So currently, you're not servicing a municipality that's as big as Germantown, 22,000 people.
No, not at all.
Okay.
Cumulatively,
Yeah.
yes, but not
Cumulatively.
individual municipalities.
So before you did the consolidation, how many dispatchers would you have had? Like 12 or
14 and a half
14 and a half? So you needed to add at least 3
for Hartford's.
for Hartford's.
If,
Okay.
if we take on a partnership with Germantown, we anticipate hiring 6 additional dispatchers and 1 supervisor.
So one of the things that you mentioned was for Hartford, you're going out for a grant. Is that right?
Correct.
And where are you going for this grant?
So it's a state grant that this it's actually fiscal year 2022, but there's a $6 million pot of money that has been offered to agencies for different types of projects, but one of the targeted projects are consolidation projects. So we put in for probably about almost $500,000 in infrastructure improvements based on that grant. The next grant cycle for next year that if we're going to have, we're talking about doing this, that pot of money in Wisconsin, it expands to $16 million.
16 million. So would you
Statewide.
go, can you go for a higher grant or what?
We would, what we need to be able to do is we have to expand our dispatch center again by adding the additional consoles to take on Germantown.
Mm.
It was capped this year at 500,000. That was the cap. could
You have to
apply.
get to the microphone. I'm sorry.
This year's grant was capped at 500,000.
Okay.
The language isn't released for next year's grant yet. I'm assuming with the bigger pot of money that the cap is going to be higher, but I don't know that.
Is it only utilized for dispatch
It's,
or public safety? What
it's
are they?
specifically for NG 911 and dispatch related things.
Okay.
At a county level,
Pardon me?
at the county level,
At the county.
right, not for municipalities.
Okay, that's fine. And do you already have the next generation 911?
So all of the hardware and equipment has all been installed.
Okay.
All the text to 911, the call handling equipment, the recorders. So the infrastructure is there, but the SCNet, all the internet providers, the tunnel, that
Mhm.
state has not, is not hooked up yet. So we're waiting for that to be hooked up to our dispatch.
Do you have a timeline on that?
So we originally thought it would be before the end of the year. AT&T's that is doing that work for the state.
All right.
So now we're hoping first quarter of 24.
Okay, Q1. Okay, great. Well, that answers my questions. So my concern is, I think you said it very well. It is up to the village of Germantown. I have never received a complaint about our fire, our police, our dispatchers. I keep getting accolades about them, and I think that you even said that we have SWAT negotiators and snipers on our staff. We've got the A team. And after having most, if not all, the dispatchers here at one of our village board meetings and saying what a wonderful, not only how they love their jobs, but how they have saved people. That was very compelling to me. And even someone walked into the police station during the third shift in distress, and she was helped. So, as you know, relationships are priceless. And unless there's an incremental difference in really funding extra police in perpetuity, I don't see a great, need for this right now because of the long wait time. And I would prefer that you get your feet wet with Hartford and those other locations so that we have some data that we can review, that you're making all of these NENA specifications, you're at the 90%, because I believe that is where we are. So if we can't do as good, if not better, I think that our staff is doing great. And we are, we're all challenged with getting money to support these items. And the technology is always going to get bigger and better and greater, and we always have to update it. So I don't see those costs going away. We as a board have to be we have to be very efficient on how we find those funds to keep not only our police, fire, and dispatchers safe, but the residents of the village of Germantown. So I think your program is admirable, and I think that the other municipalities are smaller. And I would like to have data from Jackson, Hartford, Kewaskum, all of those to measure against what we have now.
I will just say that I mentioned, I don't know if Germantown uses a quality assurance program, but we do that already where we'll take individual calls and analyze every aspect of them, including how quickly they're answered, how
Mhm.
quickly the fire departments are paged.
Mhm.
So that data, I mean, I'm sure we could get something to you. But I'm very confident that those NINA standards seem a little lax to me. That's why our standards are much higher than that.
I'm sure it's there too. Thank you.
Trustee Kaminsky.
I just wanted to comment on something that Trustee Miller mentioned. We do have the A-team in our police and fire, and that's not going away. They're just going to be dispatched differently and as efficiently or more efficiently than we're currently doing it, which saves us money, which allows us to hire more A-team members. Now, it's not just Slinger and Jackson and Kewaskum. Look at Waukesha County. Look at Ozaukee County. There's all kinds of things you can look at to see these success stories. I do not feel that we're at all on untrodden territory here, where we're just like poking blindly in the dark. We're not. This is the wave of the future. And we could sit around and let it go for another year. And like I said, throw more money at something that's going to go away anyway. Or we could take the savings from this and start putting more A-team members on the ground in Germantown, police and fire.
Trustee Hudson had his hand up prior, so I'll go to Trustee Hudson, then I'll go to Trustee Pieper and then Trustee Miller. Trustee Hudson?
So Steve, do we have a financial outline of this with deadlines? Is that in the packet that we got today or where we at?
The recommended budget includes the financial impact of this, so the recommended budget does phase out funding for 4 positions over the course of 2024 and retains funding for the 4 administrative assistants.
And does the recommended budget match up with and I'm going to use the word, the potential timeline that has been mapped out roughly here this evening, or is there a disconnect?
It does match up because the county, the county administration has committed to funding these three positions. So with that, that provides a lot of flexibility on the schedule. In fact, I would say that even if this timeline doesn't work out exactly, and there are some questions with when are the positions going to be able to be filled, and when is the technology going to get delivered and implemented. So I think having those 3 positions that would transition, it matches up with our budget, and it allows for some flexibility in case there is any delay in the timeline.
And I'm a the glass is always half empty kind of guy. So if we miss for whatever reason, right, worst case scenario, if we miss those timelines, are we still financially covered by the county?
Yes.
Yeah, this is a difficult decision, and after listening very carefully to what everybody has said, I will probably support this. Thank you.
Trustee Pieper?
I had 2 questions. One is not directed at the county, but more towards our village board or specifically Administrator Kreckle. We all know we need a new police department building facility. And if we were making plans to build a new police department building, not having the dispatch in that building, would that save us money?
Yes, that would be a significant savings in the construction costs. And I don't have a square footage number on what would be required for dispatch, but the current estimates that I have for construction of a new police building is about $500 per square foot. So if you visualize the current space that dispatch is in, you're talking about a savings that's into seven figures, pretty
Which our
easily.
current dispatch is very small.
I'm sorry,
Yeah, our current dispatch center is very small. So if we were building a new facility and planning for growth, it would be bigger than what we currently have.
it
So it'd
would.
be even more of a savings, right?
Yes, it would be even larger than what we have. And if we were to continue our own dispatch, I think that, no later than as part of the construction of the new police building, we would want to, make the technology improvements related to next gen 911, which would be at least $400,000, if I remember those numbers correctly from Chief Snow. And we would need to increase the staffing levels from the current 8 positions to at least 11 positions.
So that was one of my other questions, was the cost of next gen 911, or I may have called it by the wrong name. So you think it's about 400,000 that we would have to pay if we kept dispatch?
And Chief Snow, I know, is going to want to answer some questions here later on as well, but we did talk last week, and I believe that the last time we went out and looked at that, it was $400,000.
Is that a one-time cost, or, well, I can ask Chief Snow, sorry, but I'll wait until he speaks. Then my last question was, didn't Mequon go to Ozaki for dispatch? Does anybody know that?
Yes, yeah. Mequon transitioned over this last year, and actually they were addressing. I had a conversation with their administrator last week, and actually looked at some documents that they were looking at, and they had many of the same questions and concerns when they started the transition process that we've talked about. They like we are proposing, converted some of their dispatch positions into administrative assistants, and they were able to cover some of the second and third shift hours, not all, but some of the second and third shift hours with those administrative assistants. And then they did reconfigure their police department, or in the process of that, to create a safe room, so that if people do come during a third shift, or on a weekend third shift when there is no one available, that there would be a room that someone could kind of lock themselves into safely, and then have a connection with an officer who could come and provide assistance.
So potentially, if we go with this idea of sending dispatch to county, and when we build our new police department building, we could budget for a safe room to, I guess, lessen those concerns. I want to commend you, first off, Steve, for doing your due diligence and reaching out to the Mequon administrator. That is amazing. Did you by chance ask how it's going for them?
I did, and I'll say that we did have that both myself and other staff in the village have had conversations with the people at different levels at Mequon. The administrator, I talked with him, and he said the transition has been smooth. They have not had any issues with dropped calls or extended wait times on calls. I will also say, just in fairness, there are some other logistical things that that they're still in the process of cleaning up. And some of the things that have been brought up before, with calls, late night calls for public works related issues or some items like that that they're still working through and ironing out some bugs. But when it comes to the response time for emergency calls for police and fire, the transition has been smooth.
So that was my last question, was how we're going to handle Tim Zimmerman's concern of emergency public works, how he knew the Germantown Police Department phone number by heart. I would really like to hear how Mequon ironed that out and what their solution was and what the solution was for other communities for public works emergencies, because Tim Zimmerman's concern, it is very real. And I think that needs to be addressed, and we need to figure out a solution for that.
And Tim did do some good research, talked to a number of different communities, again, as part of the due diligence process. In Mequon, the county dispatch is taking those calls and has agreed to do that. And there are some other communities in Washington County, the other communities are not currently doing that for DPW, but they're using a 24-hour call service out of Madison. So in those cases, the DPW line is forwarded to a call center in Madison, and then the Madison call center will take the information and then contact the appropriate DPW person to respond to the issue.
Gotcha. So I apologize for having too many children that need Uber rides all over town, that I can't be there in person, but is Tim Zimmerman there by chance?
He is.
Could he come up and speak if that alleviates his concerns?
Thank you, gentlemen. Guys always got to sit in the back of the room.
We're bald. We don't like our heads on camera. Trustee Pieper, I did do significant research. Administrator Krecklow gave me about 12 to 15 communities to contact. I contacted my counterparts in those communities, and what I came up with is, in Ozaukee County, their dispatch center handles the DPW calls as well as EMS, fire, and police. Waukesha County is kind of a hot mess with a lot of DPWs going to 24-hour answering services. For example, the city of Oconomowoc has gone with 24/7, 365 admin at their police department because the calls just weren't getting processed in an efficient manner. The Village of Heartland, similar situation where in particular calls for their sewer utility for sewer backups in multi-million-dollar homes were going undispatched, so they had to figure out a better mousetrap. They also have gone to an offsite 24-hour on-call system. It seems like the folks in Washington County, we're not going to have the opportunity to have DPW dispatch to the county, correct?
Like to be consistent, all the municipalities, if we do that, so I guess we just have to find a way that's consistent.
Yeah, so my research showed that Hartford, obviously being the primary example tonight, Hartford has an electric utility. So it was a big concern for the electric folks. So they went to this offsite call center in Madison. It's very interesting that the Village of Slinger, who you guys have dispatched forever, they're Hartford's electric utility's #1 customer. So the concern for the folks in Slinger was, we don't have any of our own linemen. How do we get a lineman from Hartford to come to Slinger when there's an issue after hours? So Slinger has piggybacked on with Hartford for this call center in Madison. They're still working through some of the utility and DPW stuff for both of those municipalities, but those are your biggest examples. I don't think it's insurmountable. I think there's workarounds. I think we will, as superintendents, make it work. That's what we do. We make it work. So we'll figure it out as it comes about. it'll be a loss to the village of having that immediate answer in, your own dispatch center and, having that personal contact with dispatchers that you've worked your career with, and they, hey, we're sorry to wake you up, but this is what's happening, so.
So you're okay with it then?
Yeah, if this is the direction the village board chooses to go, we will create a workaround.
I'll support it as long as that solution is figured out in the best way possible. You did an amazing research, and I thank you for that. So as long as we figure out which village or which municipality made that transition for public works emergency calls the best way, I would like to follow their route.
Trustee Rick Miller.
Yeah, first off, I'd like to thank the sheriff's office for the discussion tonight. I think it was very informative. Shared services is the way of the world, and that's how it's going. And I see this kind of the same thing. I think about 16 or 17 years ago when the county went for a consolidated dispatch center and Germantown said no. And just think about the millions of dollars we could have saved over those years. Just think about that. That's a lot of money. I see this as a driver in a couple ways. Number one, it's money, of course. That's always a driver. Number two is technology, which is also a money driver. Technology to replace things and to get to next generation 911 for us alone, just by some of the numbers here I'm seeing is $450,000, $500,000.
That doesn't
Is
include
there?
the SENet connection.
Exactly, and that doesn't include the network infrastructure connection that has to be done. That's a big chunk of money. I also see it as that the state is wanting to do this because the grant money is only going to the consolidated centers. So they don't want us to have our own. They want it to be consolidated, and for good reason, because it should be. The other thing is that we had a referendum on the ballot in April that said that we want part of the county sales tax. And the county has said that the way that we get a portion of that sales tax is shared services. And this is the first step in shared services. And this is an obligation to our constituents that had voted for this. That's a part of it. Whether you like it or not, that's what the county said. That's how they're going to give it to us. And this is how we can get it. So I see this as a money driver, but I also see it as technology is really pushing this thing. So I'm all for it, and I have been for many, many years.
Okay. Trustee Jan Miller.
I have some additional questions regarding the dispatchers and the administrator at the dispatch station that we have currently. Are those different employees paid at a different level?
Currently, the dispatch positions are at a different pay range from the administrative assistant positions that are proposed. One of the options that the board would have is to red circle the individuals to keep the dispatchers if they accept those administrative assistant positions.
What does that mean?
Range. It means that if they're making something over the top of the administrative assistant pay range, that they would not be asked to take a pay cut to go into that slot. And that's something that I would recommend to the board, that we keep those people at the same pay rate.
Well, obviously, if they're at a different, if they're earning more, why would they take a cut in pay to be an admin?
And that's why I would recommend
Right.
keeping them at the same pay.
I don't even know if they would be interested in that. That's I'm just thinking out loud here. I don't know why, if you were used to being a dispatcher with a lot more responsibility, Why would you want to be an administrator? It's a question.
But I think Chief Snow has had some conversations with them and may be able to answer that.
My other question is based on technology, as Rick, you mentioned. This Next Generation 911 is the only place that you need this technology in the call center, or do we still have to have it here in Germantown to communicate or work the GIS system?
If we were to consolidate the dispatch,
Uh-huh.
we would not need to go through we would no longer have our own dispatch hardware and software, so we would not need to upgrade to Next Gen 911.
Well, I think I've stated before, I would prefer to see, and I know there are statistics out there, and I know that all the money is going to the county for shared services. But what the voters had in front of them in April was not about shared services. It was about shared sales tax revenue. That's what the referendum was for, and it was non-binding. So, two different things. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. It was designated for roads, so.
Chief Snow, did you want to make some comments? Before you start, though, I would like to say that I thought you represented the Village of Germantown very well within the media, and your media presentation yesterday afternoon, I think you handled it expertly and gave everybody a positive feeling, knowing that Germantown Police was part of this action and that the action was resolved and handled in a proper way. So I thank you and your staff for that. It's gave us confidence to know that we're protected.
Thank you very much. And I do, at the public safety, want to go into some greater detail on the events of that evening. I just think it would take up a lot of time to do it here tonight. I'll say, you would have been amazed by your officers. Everyone but one showed up at that call. The one that didn't had COVID. I said, do not come to this call. He would have. He wanted to be there. We had dispatchers that came in that weren't called, officers that just came in. It was, I was very proud of our department and how they handled that. And could not have handled it as well as we did without the sheriff's department. Thank you both. Their expertise and the sheriff hit it right on the head. We worked together for so long that it's just a very easy relationship that we have. The people that they're hiring there are outstanding, and our dispatchers did so well that night, and their dispatchers were burdened by that event as well and taking care of things for us. So overall, when you look at the cooperation between law enforcement, that's what it's supposed to look like. It was a model of how things should go. So just very appreciative to everyone involved in that. In regards to this incident, or to this matter, I should say, I'm just going to go back to when I started, and one of my focuses was addressing staffing at the Germantown Police Department, right? That was, and to some degree, wages were some of the current concerns that I had. When our communication supervisor retired, I seen a huge need for IT. We turned that, the plan was to turn that into an IT position that morphed into something else. So we don't have that supervisor currently with our dispatch. We have eight dispatchers. And the point I guess I want to make is I've been clear early on what it means to have your own dispatch. And I love having dispatch. I love our dispatchers. They're part of our law enforcement family. What they do, the most important things they do, you can't really see. We have 8 dispatchers. And some recent conversations, I think there was kind of a feeling that we have two dispatchers working on each shift. And I think now, we don't. We have two dispatchers working on second. Sometimes we have two on first or third, but a lot of times it's one. We don't have a mandatory two dispatchers on first or third. And that's tough. So we've been doing it with 8 dispatchers for decades. That's the way we've been doing things. And one thing we really haven't talked about was the staffing level in dispatch, because I'm trying to just slowly put this together and not ask for everything at once. But certainly when we start talking about dispatch, and I'll say this, when you talk about taking calls and dispatching squads, rescue, technology as it is, I don't believe that residents are going to see a difference. They're going to see the difference in some of the things that, some of those more personal touch things, and having the bodies at the police department 24/7 and having that, it is very important to our tasks. With that being said, when we talk about moving forward and a solution to dispatch, moving forward like we are now, I want to be clear, isn't a solution. We had the staffing we have now in dispatch, and maintaining that and working to maintain that staffing level isn't a solution. The solution would be, right now, we should have 11 dispatchers. Once we go to next gen 911, that would need to be a minimum of 12 dispatchers. That would mean bringing a supervisor back to that, to the dispatchers. So our staffing is way off from what it should be. And I think the sheriff made some good points when he talked a little bit about some of the things that are going to be required once we go to that next gen 911. Sooner or later, we're going to have to go to next gen 911. We're not going to be able to just stay the way we're doing things as everybody around us is going next gen. So just to be clear, when we say, let's see how this works, and we've been coming back to this issue, I think since like the one that I looked at had a memo back in '97 where we decided we're going to keep dispatch, and then a few years later we're talking about the consolidated dispatch again. So what I'm really looking for is a solution. And if that solution is to keep dispatch, outstanding. But then tell me that we're committed to increasing that staffing level far greater than what we are now. Anything short of that, it really isn't a solution to the issues that we're having. Right now, just so you know, the way it works is we're only able to maintain the staffing with 8 because our dispatchers get bounced all over the place. You don't realistically know what your schedule is going to look like 2 weeks down the road, because someone being off on vacation, someone being off sick, someone being off injured is going to change your schedule. The newer generation is not real cool with that. We got 2 young dispatchers that have doing magnificent with it, and they're rolling it with it. But by and large, that's not something that people are okay with. They want some predictability in their schedule. We all do. We can't do that with 8 people. We never have been. The way we move our dispatchers goes back decades. We've always done that. And it's just something they got used to doing. We're down to 6 dispatchers right now. Hiring dispatchers, and these gentlemen can tell you, is not an easy task. We're competing with them. So we have to worry about our wages keeping up with them. And that's going to be a constant battle as well. I support our dispatch. I love our dispatch. I'm just up here this year. I really want to walk away from here having a solution that we're not going to be addressing next year, the year after that. Don't think it's fair to our dispatchers to constantly not know what their future is going to really look like. I want to make sure everyone is taken care of, and I think there's a plan to do that. Again, I'm all for our dispatch. I want a solution for our dispatch. That's my primary goal, to be able to walk out of here and say, this is what we're going to do. Let's make it work. If that is that we're maintaining our dispatch, outstanding. I'll do a cartwheel out the door. But then tell me that we're going to have the resources to do what we absolutely need to do with that, and I understand those are considerable.
Mhm. Thank you. Board,
My hand was up.
trustee Peeper.
Chief Snow, I have watched your opinion change on this very, very, very slowly and very, very slightly. But tonight is the first night that I feel like there is a hint of tone that you could get behind this. Am I incorrect in saying that? Am I correct in saying that?
I'm the chief of police. I'm the leader of that organization. If this board says this is what we're doing, I'm the biggest cheerleader. I will go out to the public and say this will absolutely work. But I just, my opinion hasn't changed in that in the utopia society, all things being perfect, I would certainly absolutely maintain my dispatch. I
I
just
get
want to
that.
make sure that they're taken care of in that they have the personnel necessary to do their jobs, right? We've been doing it for a long time where it's just, and I'll give you an example of the two people that left. One specifically left because he said, I can't get bouncing anymore. I can't keep changing my schedule the way I'm changing it, and went into the private sector. How long is that going to be an issue for us? As long as we keep moving dispatches the way we are. Again, the ones we have right now have been fantastic doing it. They've made that place run. I mean, there's 6 dispatchers for 24/7 services. Asking them to do that for a prolonged period of time. And if we go down to 5, remember this discussion, we kind of started this last year when we did go down to 5 dispatchers. And our dispatchers will tell you we can't go down to 5 dispatchers again because it was brutal for them. And one of the things we found out in talking with Captain Stacer was it wasn't a flip of a switch like we thought it was. It was easier for Mequon to do that because they were already on the Pro Phoenix Juris, and they could basically flip a switch and get dispatched by the county. We couldn't do that. So Captain Merton did a lot of work and working with Pro Phoenix and getting funding, getting grants for this multi-juris so that, and quite frankly, predicting that we would need at some point to have the county take over our dispatch services, at least on 3rd shift. And that was going to make it a much more seamless task. And then by the time we started talking about this is when we were down to 5 dispatchers. We were able to get dispatchers back up. And for a while, we were at full staffing. And again, now we're down to 6.
And I just want to say you have done an amazing job as chief. You have been in, to say that you have been stuck between a rock and a hard place is an understatement. And not only have you crawled out of that space, you've excelled and proven yourself as chief. And you lead your team with the most admirable, I can't even say it. Help me out here, guys. Admirably. There's certain words I can't say, and that's one of them. But anyways, I could not be more proud to call you our police chief, and I thank you for that. And for you saying that whatever we decide that you're okay with, it speaks volumes for me. So that's the fact that you're not going to sit there and speak out against the village board for deciding something like this. That is the nail in the coffin for me. I support it now.
All right, thank you. Board, trustee Nyrider,
I guess I'm going to float a motion out here.
go ahead.
I'm going to make a motion that we switch our dispatch service to Washington County per the dates that are were outlined before and be part of the 2024 budget.
So in effect, and just so we, before I get a second, so we understand, what your motion basically says is to follow the budget as it's proposed.
Yes.
Okay. Motion made and seconded. Discussion I think we've had, unless anybody has anything they want to add. Trustee Baum.
And I guess maybe we will figure this out at Public Safety Committee, but I'm just not sure how the funding is going to work and how the plan comes together.
A
I
lot of-
understand, we got two numbers. We got $300,000, we got $150,000.
150,000 is provided by the county to help cover during the transition.
150 is from the county to help us cover during the transition.
Right, and then there's also a possibility of 30,000 in grants for the consolidation.
Yeah, and it's the timing and the transition that I'm just not comfortable with yet.
Well,
'cause I-
basically, and just as, it will be spelled out, and some of it is within the proposal that you have in front of you, and others will be put in the paper more than what the village administrator has said, but knowing the plan in itself is a year and a half to complete. So by the year of May or 2025, that would be when the full transition would be. And that's not a short time frame. It allows us a year and a half to work out the smaller details of the transition. And at the same time, any transition of current dispatchers to the county, if possible, can occur within that year and a half as well. So I think that's, 18 months is a long time that a lot of that stuff can be worked out, but I think we can put by the next public safety meeting, something more on paper, now that it's going more in a direction possibly after the vote, in that direction. Did you have something to add?
I was just going to suggest that, knowing the chair of the Public Safety Committee, I would expect that there's probably going to be an item for regular updates on this in future public safety meetings. And his staff is happy to provide that. I think that's needed, that we can provide regular updates on the transition, what the plan is, what progress is being made, and report to the committee on that.
And I think that the opportunity for our dispatchers to be easily moved up there would greatly enhance the comfort level for many people.
Again, as was stated even by the sheriff, they're looking for seasoned people that know not only the area, but also know the Pro Phoenix software as well. So that's a benefit to those people. They can't say they can guarantee it because they have to go through their own interview process. And as you're aware, in even corporate America, when somebody is internally good for a job, they still post it publicly and go through the resumes and through the interviews before it's provided as an opportunity to somebody that might be already working for that company. So I would look at that as a similar situation. Further discussion? Trustee Chan Miller.
I just wanted to say that in one of our meetings, we had made a motion to amend the police department budget, bringing back and then bring it back to the public safety for additional research and studies regarding the dispatch. We asked for the dispatch number to be taken out so that we understood what the impact on the budget was going to be. In other words, the budget came to us with this dispatch already moved
Yes,
into it.
yes, as a balanced budget, yes.
Yes. So,
So you would ask Steve to provide you with an unbalanced budget?
yes.
Which he did.
Can't do that. He can't do that. The direction from the board is he has to present a balanced budget.
What we're seeing is most of the budget, Matthew, is most of the budget in an Excel file that the board is seeing.
Yes, the entire budget has been provided to the
So it's
board.
it's this budget, is it in Tyler Munis?
No, once the budget is officially adopted, then I'll enter it into Munis.
So it's an Excel file that can be changed. And that was our point.
No, you're misunderstanding. The direction the board has provided to the village administrator is he must propose a balanced budget. He is not going to propose an unbalanced budget.
We just wanted to see the difference.
$600,000. That was a difference. That's the difference that's been stated from the beginning. Further discussion? No further discussion? We'll do roll call vote, please.
Trustee Nyrather?
Aye.
Trustee Baum? Trustee Jan Miller?
No, I would like to see the dispatch stay here. Thank you.
Trustee Hudson?
Aye.
Trustee Peeper?
Aye.
Trustee Rick Miller?
Aye.
Trustee Kaminsky? And Village President Walter?
Aye. Motion passes. Gentlemen, thank you for coming. Thank you for the information. Chief, thank you for your presentation as well. Next item, in the top sheet that we have is additional PS personnel. That would be public safety personnel. Village Administrator.
I can provide sort of a framework to begin the discussion here, but for the past year, really since budget adoption last year, we've been exploring ways to add public safety personnel to the village budget. And the goal, the target to try to get to is an additional 4 positions within the police department and an additional 12 positions within the fire department. And those needs are very significant and real in both departments. And I think they provided the chiefs have provided a number of presentations to the Public Safety Committee and the village board. The direction that was given to me by the board and the Public Safety Committee was to come up with some alternatives besides a full referendum. And there are some options that are before you tonight. And then there's an item for a referendum later on in the agenda. But without a referendum, it would be possible to add 4 positions to the police department at a cost of about $315,000 by utilizing 3 different and balancing the budget, utilizing 3 different sources of funds. One is, since the recommended budget was submitted to the village board, we received notification from the State Department of Transportation that our transportation aids are $118,000 higher than what we had included in the recommended budget. The second item is the board does have the flexibility to increase the property tax levy by about $150,000 using the net new construction from tax increment districts within the village. The impact of that on a $300,000 home would be about $30 per year. And then the final $46,000 could be made up by a reduction in the street tree budget to balance the budget out. So that would be an option that would be before the board to meet the police staffing needs. That still leaves the fire department, and overall their target is to get to 12 positions. An option that the board could pursue at this time in order to give immediate staffing relief to the fire department would be to add 2 firefighters at a cost of about $207,000. And the source of funds for that could be the public fire protection fee and transferring an additional $207,000 out of the $537,000 to the quarterly utility bill. And then that would get a start on the fire positions. And I would further recommend that we, and this is an item later on in the agenda, but placing a request for additional fire positions on a referendum at the April 2024 election.
Committee.
Question.
Trustee Kaminsky.
Moving forward, the savings that we're going to be seeing a year from now, year and a half from now, with the dispatch consolidation, that does free up dispatcher salaries, correct?
That is already reflected in the fact that the county is making that contribution. So
Okay, so that has nothing to do with us. So our basic choices are what you have laid out here, or referendum for the whole works.
as I see it, those are the choices.
My only, I guess, when I look at that, if we're going to have to do a referendum anyway, I would want to do a referendum for what our needs are. Because we only go to that pot once. You know, here we're splitting it kind of out, and we're still going to go and try for a referendum. What are we asking for in this? $601,000? We're going to referendum for $601,000.
If you approved the recommendations that I just made, then the referendum would be just for 6 firefighters at a cost of about $601,000.
As it's been publicly stated that you wouldn't be able to hire 12 in a year anyways.
Yeah. Okay. And then under your funding proposal here, okay, it's $118,000 in additional transportation aids. So where does the money come from next year?
Though, my understanding, and the finance director can jump in or correct me if I'm wrong, but that reflects the increase in state aids that was part of Act 12. We weren't sure what we would be getting when we put the recommended budget together, but the state did increase funding for Act 12. That number does fluctuate a bit from year to year.
It's supposed to be good going forward.
Supposed to be good going
Yeah.
forward.
And I really don't mind B at all, because I think B is very honest. This is money we need, so why not include that property tax levy for TID new construction? I have no problem with doing that at all. But again, and then the tree planting budget for 1 year, I have no problem with that. But where is that money coming from next year?
That would be then a permanent reduction to the tree planting budget. So
Why are we picking on the tree? It can be a permanent reduction to anything. So why are we like picking on the tree planting budget?
So, sorry.
I mean, seriously, I mean, could come from
know,
somewhere else, correct?
it could come from somewhere else, and that could be, you
Yeah.
know, one of the issues that we work on next year when we're
Yeah.
here is how do we get more money for tree planting?
Or I would say this year we take it from this.
Right,
And
that-
maybe next year, it's that $50,000 that's floating out there that we can pull from wherever.
Where else?
That could
Yeah.
be a directive towards staff. It comes from the tree planting budget this year. Next year, come up with a better,
Yeah,
more permanent solution.
That alone at 314 puts 4 officers on the street.
I think it's worth it. I think it's worth it. And it sounds a little messy, looks a little messy, but it gets the job done this year.
Trustee Hudson.
So you know me and trees. So
You want more?
how many years behind in trees are we? And so, and so I will probably support this because our greatest need in this village is public safety officers, period. But
Boots on the street.
I was listening to you last night, Terry, talking about the decaying infrastructure of our water utility. And that lesson is also valid for our tree planting program too. So we are a decade, 12 years behind in trees?
Well, and Scott Anderson is here to answer that in more detail. But as Scott is coming forward, you know, one of the things that I would say is that and one of the reasons I looked to this, and I do love trees too. One of my former jobs, I was a city forester. So I see the value of this. I hug a tree every day.
Terry, help with the chainsaws.
But
So now we've explained the $93,000 stump grinder.
But one of the things and one of the reasons that this is on the list, and Scott and I have talked about this as well, is I think we need to work with the Public Works and Highway Committee on our approach to tree planting and tree maintenance. Because as you all will recall, we had some issues that came up with planting trees, and where do the residents want trees planted? Where do they not want trees planted? And how is the village going to maintain that?
Yeah, and my particular line of questioning is, you know, we can postpone a year, we can postpone 2 years. Now we're postponing 11 years or 12 years. At some point in time, kicking the can down the road catches up to us. And I just want us to be very aware of what we're doing. And if we're going to postpone this year, what's the plan?
So-
Because we postpone and say we're going to do this, but in reality, we never do this. We just postpone. So with that, Scott is going to come up with the cure-all plan, which we're all waiting to hear.
No pressure.
It's a low bar.
I love that there's a little light mood here. This is good. First and foremost, the timing tonight in Public Works is next week, and we will be talking about both tree planting and tree trimming. We are on tap this year to use the entire street tree budget, and we're going to bring a tree trimming project before you guys. Public Works did ask that we would bring back a tree planting plan. And I think we did determine, and I don't want to get too far down the road on this tonight, but I think we did determine that we had some issues with our GIS and some determinations about vacant planting sites, and we'll clear all that up next week. What we're going to bring before you is a plan, and we did talk about a 10 or a 12-year plan to close these vacant planting sites. I think after doing the work we've done over the summer and what we present to you at Public Works, pretty confident that we're going to bring that way down to like almost a 4-year. We're going to be able to close those vacant planting sites in 4 years.
So you're telling us we're 4 years behind, not 12, Scott?
Yeah, and again, that'll make a lot more sense, I think, after our Public Works presentation, I hope.
Okay.
So that is better. And I don't want to speak out of school, you know, as we talk about some of the long term. One of the other things within my budget this year is an increase in salt. And some of that has to do with the new campus coming on board. So certainly a lot of difficult decisions, and there's been a lot of great conversation tonight. I would hope that the street tree budget isn't impacted for many years to come. And I would think right out of my very own budget, there probably will be a significant reduction, I would hope, in salt for next year, because we won't be looking to fill that extra dome. So that potentially could be another solution down the road. But
So I think I'd like to make the motion to spend the $118,000 in state transportation aid, the TID tax levy increase of $150,000, and the $46,000 from the trees, and earmark that for our police department to get adequately staffed.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Trustee Nyrider.
Let me just go back here. Steve, you were talking about an extra 207,000. That is coming out of the fire protection fee, which I think you know my feelings on that one, and we've talked about that many times at public safety, or no, Public Works, I believe, because it's. And I don't know if that's part of this, or this is a totally separate, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Good, okay, because then I'll save any comments down the road.
We look
Okay.
forward to that.
Further discussion on the motion.
Second.
Yes,
Yeah,
Jan,
I second.
trustee Jan Miller, seconded. No further discussion? Do roll call vote, please.
Trustee Nyrather,
Well, you know, I hate it when Dennis isn't here. I gotta go first. Aye.
Trustee Baum,
Yes, I will support that.
Trustee Jan Miller,
Yes. Aye.
Trustee Trustee Hudson,
Aye.
Trustee Pieper,
Aye.
Trustee Rick Miller.
Aye.
Trustee Kaminsky, and President Walter.
Aye. Motion passes.
President Walter, if maybe before we move off of this item, I just would like to point out the fire department still is an issue that's out there, and you know, it's there aren't any more rabbits to pull out of the hat here, and that's why, even though I know the public fire protection fee is a challenging issue and not a popular one. And there are some good arguments against using that. It's one of the few tools that we have available to us that would provide some immediate or relatively immediate relief to the fire department. You know, while I would still recommend the referendum, as some of the trustees have pointed out, as we've gone through that process, if the referendum does pass in April, the tax levy doesn't take effect until 2025. And that means that we're talking about, at least 18 months before there's any relief. And I know that our fire department is struggling to fill shifts, today, as things come up. For the first time since we went to a full-time fire department, I got a call from the fire chief, saying that they weren't able to fill enough shifts to operate both ambulances, in the past couple of weeks. And that's a major concern. And, I would, that's why my recommendation as a board is, and I understand it's a very serious, difficult step, but to utilize some of those funds in the public fire protection fee to give some immediate relief to the fire department.
Is that in here somewhere?
I don't see it.
It was, I'm sorry, it was not, the memo that I attached, it was in a PowerPoint presentation that I gave to public safety, so I apologize for that.
And because I have no idea how much a fire protection fee is now, how that's going to affect
We've-
constituents.
Can you
We've
just,
been through this before. Last year, we looked at moving the entirety of the fire protection fee to help support this. Basically, what it is the water utility customers would then be funding that portion of the fire department. What was decided on, because it was a contentious discussion, was that we would cap it at where it is now. And any increases needed within that fire protection fee would then come from the water utility. So it did increase the water bills slightly at the same time that we were already increasing them.
Okay.
And that was the best that we could come up with, that everybody kind of voted on in a majority. Other than that, it's stalemated a
Okay.
couple times, and I think we brought it back 2 or 3 times before that solution was proposed and accepted. Because it does, in essence, move the cost of where that is fully onto the users of the water utility. And fire protection, ambulance protection is village-wide, not just where the water is. So that's what makes it contentious,
So we're suggesting what?
to move 200,000 out of the, what is it? It's
Out of
850,
537,000.
so half.
So it would be roughly a $4 per quarter increase in the average residential utility bill.
That would be 2. John, what does 2 do? You usually talk in 3s.
That is correct. We do typically talk in 3s because we do have 3 shifts to keep it even across the board. If you remember in my presentation a few weeks back, we had talked about moving some positions to daytime positions. And if it was to, those positions would more than likely end up in those daytime positions. The dollar amount is the same no matter how they end up. It's still the overall same pay per year for the positions. And I just wanted to, if I may speak a little bit towards this here. As obviously, we work very closely with the police department, and would be very happy that they get people that they need too. As the village administrator said, we are desperately in need right now. We did have on Saturday night, we weren't be able to fill our state mandated shifts. So we ended up with 3 people on shift on a Saturday night, which greatly harms us. And with the police department adding the extra people, and I don't know if the chief, I haven't spoken to him about this, would like even more people possibly, but the referendums for public safety tend to do better when it's both police and fire on the referendum.
Great.
And I would hate to be in a position where we get absolutely nothing because there was nothing in the referendum.
Trustee Kaminsky.
I agree with that, Chief. I really do. And that's why when I look at this, I think a referendum's great, but I think this is too small. And I think it should be police and fire. We tried fire once before, fell pretty darn flat. And if we try this again and it falls flat, we're right back, right here, sitting at this table, trying to figure out the impossible. So I say, if we do need this money, I've been a referendum supporter for the entire year that we've been talking about this. Let's get it out there, what our needs actually are, and throw a couple more police officers in there. And let's ask for what we really think we need, even if it is another 300 grand.
So are
I think we need to do that.
you suggesting that then the referendum would ask for 12 additional firefighters?
No, I'm suggesting that we combine police and fire in this referendum. So what additional police needs do we have over the next 2 or 3 years?
Is that not the point of the, one of the referendums is, one of them is with the full $1.6 million. The other one is with half at 815.
Right.
Least-
That's down further when we get to item 5.
And
Right now, we're kind of discussing the movement of 200,000 out of the
public fire protection.
John, stay up there for a second.
So moving the 200,000 out of public fire protection.
Right, to get 2 additional firefighters this year.
Onto the water bills.
You're moving it onto you're taking it out of the general fund
Right.
as it's being now
Well,
covered.
everybody's
The
paying for it.
500,000 that we capped
Mhm.
is being covered by the general fund, meaning
Right.
all tax bodies
Right.
pay to it. And moving 200,000 and putting it on the water utility. use.
$4 per quarter, you said,
5.
5.
Is it 4 or 5?
If we were to move it,
Yeah.
it'd probably be around 4 per quarter on the average residential home. It's charged by meter size.
Yeah.
Most residential meters are small compared to commercial meters.
As much as I hate to do that to the water bills, I think this is a desperate situation. You want fire protection. And the general taxpayers in this community are already paying their share with the cap on it. So this has to happen. I have no problem with that.
It would move the cap then down to 300,000,
Correct.
Yeah.
because you'd be taking 200 from that cap.
And just to confirm, so we currently spend 537,000. If we were to take 207, it'd be 330.
Okay,
So
so right now it's a discussion, so. Trustee Jan Miller.
So I don't know if you, Chief, if you got to answer the question, do you need 3 firefighters to fill it? Yes or no? Yes, kind of, sort of.
I need 12.
I know. But what
3 would
about a
be-
little start?
3 would be optimal
Okay.
right away to make this work most effectively.
But
Okay.
2 would help support.
Correct.
Well, let me ask my next question, please. If we upped it to 3 firefighters, what would the balance be, Matt?
Taking it from
From
the
the
same
5
place,
Yes, 537.
you just add $100,000.
Yeah,
Well,
roughly.
Numbers around
Uh,
330.
103 or something like that.
330 goes to police, the firefighters, and 200 stays in the.
Oh, yeah, flip it. Okay. Yeah, $6
Roughly.
roughly. And then if you need 12, that still leaves 9. And Chief Snow needs more than 4 probably, right? But I mean, no, for like a referendum, a separate thing. I'm trying to do the math. If we immediately give you 4, then what other amount of police would you need to round things out for the next 2 years, 3 years?
5 years, thinking 5 years.
5.
Yeah.
You're,
So the 4 immediately, quite frankly, with the discussion we just had with dispatch, will be absolutely necessary. No other board is impacted the way we are with losing dispatchers. So when I say we can make that work, it's with the 4 bodies. Long-term, remember that only allows me to increase my staffing on second shift by one person. To increase the staffing on the other shifts as I would need to, I ideally would be additional 4 bodies.
Okay.
Still 4. I think an additional 4 and looking at that over the course of the next 8 to 10 years is realistic with the projected population
you.
increase.
Thank you very much. So 4 now, 4 later, fire, 3 fire, 9 later, fire.
Well, originally we're talking 2, you've added 1.
Yeah,
That's
I
part
did
of the
that.
discussion.
I know, it's part of my discussion. Thank you. For the incremental difference of $2 on the water bill.
To the water, yeah, you're right.
It's water wars.
It's it's interesting. Trustee Baum, you have your hand up? Or are you done, Trustee Miller?
Yes.
Okay, Trustee Baum.
I got an email today that both chiefs would have some more information on overtime. What's driving all that? Help us figure out if there's funds available there. We're currently doing $220,000 in overtime budgeted for the police department and 112 for the fire department, as I recall. There more information on what is generating the overtime?
And I basically went through every overtime card that we signed in 2023 up to this point. I have a report. I did not bring it with me. I would have it prepared in greater detail for public safety, but I can tell you that a large portion of it is related to calls for service. This officer holding over because of transports with ACS, completing reports, completing mandatory reports. So we're doing as much as that as we are staffing. However, staffing has been a significant driver in that we were short a supervisor at the beginning of the year. We did go through a promotion, which left us short in patrol for a significant portion of the year. We have had 2 supervisors off on FMLA for extended periods of time. In addition to payouts for vacation, which is a reoccurring expense from year to year, something that's unavoidable. I'm trying to think off the top of my head some of the other issues that training is significant. And in the report, I kind of go through monthly. Typically monthly, we have some type of department training, whether it be firearms, whether it be DAT, whether it be some countywide. EVOC is biannual. We do a active shooter scenario with the county every year, but those are big contributors because as officers go to training, we have to backfill their position on patrol.
And these 4 additional officers aren't going to reduce that at all?
It will have an impact. I don't know that it's going to have as much as people would anticipate, but simply because, remember, we're putting 2 of them on second shift so we can increase the staffing on second shift. Being able to put at least 1 of them on one of the other shifts would help fill some of those overtime spots created by vacation, training, things of that nature.
Okay. And Chief Delane? We had talked at public safety, we had talked about these 2 new positions being flex people who could work a variety to fill your backlog of stuff, your vacations and sick leave.
Correct. Most of my overtime is caused by vacations and time off. We do not have the ability to absorb any time off currently. So every time someone takes a day off, someone does have to come in and pick up for that position. To the tune, was it last week we had 1 individual who worked 100 hours, and the week before that he had 116 hours. I have a paid on premise gentleman this week who's going to have overtime.
Okay. So these 2 people that we're initially talking about here will help with overtime, not help with overtime, not to the extent that it would pay for a 3rd person just by eliminating overtime.
Correct. It would allow us to absorb some overtime without mandating people in constantly. The day that we fell short of our staffing was a direct result of us mandating people in all the time. Ultimately, what happened, they didn't answer their phone.
Yep. So if we can get the 2, that would help with the overtime. which may help pay for a third or portion of a third.
I don't think it would help with the overtime. I think it would help with the staffing. So
Yeah,
that it
well-
would have a better opportunity for the needed personnel at the time they're needed.
To cover the regular shifts.
Right. There would still be overtime.
Yeah.
But in both cases, in both departments, the hiring of extra staff will reduce the amount of overtime that is paid. It will certainly not eliminate it by no means, but it will reduce it.
That's correct.
Fair statement, yeah.
That's it.
We don't have a motion or anything, right?
Don't.
No, we're just discussing, so. Trustee Nyrider.
Thank you. Just to clarify, Mr. President, that I'm understanding this, when we talk about the fire protection fee, we're talking about either the 207 or 300,000 or whatever would be coming out of that
36.
the 537. It isn't, that amount of money isn't above the 537, correct?
That's correct.
And I guess that's, I have an objection using that fire protection fee, and I didn't want to disappoint Trustee Hudson by not talking about it. Because again, it's a tax that not everybody's paying. And I have no problem supporting the fire or police in hiring, but there's got to be a different way, because this is not fair. Somebody that's not on sewer and water, I don't see it. It's not fair. I'm on sewer and water, so I'm going to get hit for it. I'm not trying to pick on you, but I believe you're on septic and well, and that you're not going to pay for it. So that's my objection. It's always been my objection. I know that fee's out there, and I know last year, yeah, we switched things around again, but I just can't. We seem to be using this as a basketball and bouncing it off the wall, and it hit there last year, and now it's over here this year. I just have an objection to that, using that. Thank you.
Trustee Hudson.
If memory serves correct, this fee is assessed to those people who are on sewer and water to pay for the
Fire hydrant.
the fire hydrants, the infrastructure that is used.
Mhm.
And that is what this fee is for. It is not to pay, and I don't, by no means do I mean to downplay the needs of the fire department. But this fee is not to be used as I was going to say slush, but I'll even be more as a fund to do whatever we want with. There is a specific use for this fee, is there not? That's because that's what we told the voters when I voted against it and everybody else voted for it. So now it is very hard for me to talk about increasing our water fees 80 some odd % and then throwing another fee on top of that. And to go back to what Trustee Nyrider is saying, it's just plain not fair.
Right, you're basically taking it off the general fund and putting it on the water utility.
Yeah.
Users.
Yes.
So that it would take that 207, or in the case of what Trustee Chan Miller proposed, 300 and whatever, 8, 9, 10, off of general fund, and allowing it to be that 300,000 or 200,000 to be used for the salaries of the 2 additional or 3 additional firefighters.
So for 1 year, we could pull $100,000 out of the seal coating project.
That would be my suggestion.
We could take the $100,000 somewhere out of the $1.3 million of unspent ARPA funds. We could take $100,000 out of our reserves to pay for this for 1 year until we figure out whether this referendum is going to pass or not. We do not need to set this precedent, and I think it's an incredibly bad idea.
It's just a suggestion of that's been discussed before, and I think that's why the village administrator brought it up. I agree with what you're saying in regards to addressing this immediate need. I think it's important and shows support for the fire department, because as John is cautiously mentioning, without panic in his voice, that they need people now. He needs people now because he's ending up being short on shifts. So a way to do that is what Steve suggested. I'm not in favor of it for a lot of the same reasons that trustee Nyrider and trustee Hudson have stated. I would rather take 200,000 out of the street repair and then support that with what we have left in ARPA back to the street repair. And that way, at least it's perpetual and it's not taken out of temporary funds. And you're basically taking something that's already in the general fund of street repair and taking that 207,000 and putting it to one need that's very immediate now within the fire department. And that's how I would prefer to support it than looking at the hydrant fee.
I'll make a motion to take $100,000 out of the seal coating project.
We're gonna need
One,
two.
100.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm
Yeah, I'm listening.
$100,000 out of the seal coating project, and then $100,000 out of the 750,000 unspent ARPA road funds for 2024 to fund 2 officers for Chief Delane.
Firefighters?
Yeah, they're officers.
Second for discussion.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion, trustee Baum.
Since we're diving into the ARPA funds and we're going to talk about all this at one point, the ARPA building improvement funds is dedicated for a police department building design.
Correct.
When do we really look to design this building? January 1 or
We have,
midsummer into the fall, so we're breaking ground spring?
we have time that we can still use the ARPA funds. It doesn't have to be
Right.
next year.
So I'm wondering if we could take money out of the building design, because it's not going to be used anytime soon.
I actually, we are, I'm working on an RFP, and one of the reasons I haven't put it out yet is because the dispatch question was out there, so we needed to know what we were designing, but I am planning to have a proposal for a design contract to the village board in December or January for design to start at the beginning of 2024.
Yeah, I just don't think we're going to spend all that money
No.
in 24 is where I'm getting at.
Based on what we did with the DPW building,
Yeah.
You're never gonna
I
put
think
it-
we might.
No.
I have a problem using temporary funding for support of long-term goals. Long-term goals meaning salaries for employees. We've done it before knowing what we had on the come. This is just money that's hanging out there that's somewhat designated, slightly designated, and I don't like the idea of using ARPA funds for this. I'd rather take it out of a general fund item. And that way I know it's covered and then can be covered the following year without having to base my following year, 2025, on the outcome of a referendum. Because that's a gamble to me. And I think John would feel better and would probably have a better chance of getting to people in knowing that that funding supported long-term. Further discussion, trustee Hudson. Okay,
Terry?
trustee Kaminsky.
Say that this was long-term out of the general funds, is it take another $100,000 out of the.
Terry, Mike.
No, it would be redesignated to these. So you take it out this year and it will start at whatever's been left the following year. So
It
if
would
it's,
not be coming out of the road
so if it be
fund.
$500,000 and you're taking the 200,000 out of the roads, for instance, you would start the 2025 budget with $300,000 in the road.
As opposed to the 5.
Correct.
And then we're going to end up where we were about 10 years ago, when I came onto this board, roads were the most significant issue, like about 14 years ago, because we took the road budget and used it for everything else for 3 years. And then all of a sudden, every time you answer the phone, it's about poor road condition. I do not want to go that route. I am not committing to removing $200,000 from the road budget every year. I will for 1 year.
That's all.
And I will gamble. I will gamble on this referendum passing if we add the police to it. I'm willing to take that gamble, and I'm willing to sit here next year if we have to and hammer this out again, but I will not consistently say I'm taking $200,000 out of the roads.
And I completely agree with you. This is a 1 year temporary Band-Aid. This is
Yeah.
certainly not an ongoing fix. And President Walter, I understand your sentiments. I do. I don't think we can find an answer that will address our long-term problem tonight,
Mhm.
because we are hoping that our citizens see the wisdom and the need to pass the referendum. And that's what we don't know. And we have to move forward knowing that. There is no good solution tonight.
May I?
You'll have the floor.
In fact, I would like to know what taking the $100,000 out of the seal coating budget is going to mean to our Public Works and Highway Department. If you wouldn't mind, Scott, just, because I think we did do some reductions in this area already.
Just to add, correct. So historically, we budgeted around 350,000. The 2024 recommended budget decreased that to 250,000.
And now we're going to decrease it to like 150. We're not going to get anything done. Scott?
You know, and again, all the comments made here, we can do anything for a year. And again, I'm the roads guy. Again, I would look back to Kevin. Kevin is going to be a roads guy. If we can do anything for a year, this can't be a long-term solution, or to your point, Trustee Kaminsky, we'll be right back where we were. And when I was here at that time. So we can make things work. Our seal coating will be very small this year, and that we'll get done what we can get done.
Well, I am also thinking that if this is a one-time solution that we're coming up with, right? For the $200,000, I would be happy taking $100,000 out of the ARPA funds for the roads, as was suggested, and the other $100,000 out of reserves, because this is an emergency, in my opinion.
Are you amending the motion?
I will make that as an amendment to the motion.
Need a second?
But we need a second.
I'll second that then.
Yeah, okay.
All right, further discussion on the motion to amend.
My conversation on this, or did I?
Keep
am
going,
I done?
Terry.
Okay.
Still have it.
I mean, I think we obviously all see we have a need here, and it will fulfill the need for our fire chief short term. And then we can hopefully, when it comes up later on our discussion, I really think we do need to add police to the fire absolutely referendum and work like dogs to make that thing pass. Because if this past week doesn't show people our needs, how many more incidents do we need to show people that we need these people? So I really think I'm going to bet on this passing, and I'm fine with a Band-Aid. And I think if there ever were a time to take a $100,000 Band-Aid out of our cash reserves, this would be it. One time for this special need, and then 100,000 from the ARPA road funds.
Rather than the general fund? So that would take the ARPA road funds down to 650. How much do we have left over from last year's borrowing for roads?
We didn't borrow in
How
this
much do
current
we have
year.
left over unspent from what was budgeted? It's usually around 300,000. And Larry had said at that time that he would use it all in 2023, and I'm just curious if it was all used.
I think it was.
And we still do have capital borrowing that we can look at in early next year.
Correct, but we may still have what what was taken out of reserves last year left over, because we usually hang out with about 300 to 400,000, the unused funds for road repairs.
You're thinking you'd rather take it from that than?
No, I'm just curious.
It's gonna take me a second. Just
Okay.
Um,
And 1 second, I'll recognize somebody. I understand the need and I understand the emergency, and I 100% agree with it. It's an emergency and we need to address it, and we need to make Chief Delane know that we support his department in this emergencies. He said it to us more than once that this day is coming, and now it's here. So I agree with the emergency part. What I don't agree with in some regards is using the funds that we've always heard over and over again shouldn't be used for this type of a purpose. Or ARPA funds used for salaries of employees. So I have a problem with that. The only other issue that I have in the reserves is I'm fearful, being that we've taken the 1.3 or 3.1 million previously out of reserves for offsetting our borrowing, and now take out another 100,000. I'm not sure if that's going to impact our Moody's rating, and I'd be curious, especially since we'd be going out for bonding for not only for our capital, but for possible future TIFs. But that's my thought process in reserve.
What do we find out? Do we know how much is left?
Matt's looking it up.
Okay.
We're gonna be pretty close to completing the full amount from what we budgeted to what we rolled over. Year to date, we're at about 1.7, and we had about 1.8 allocated for that.
So it's only 100,000.
Correct.
So it's not the normal 300,000 to 400,000 we've seen before left over from when we did borrow for roads.
Correct.
Okay, good. I'm glad Larry said that he could do it. So he actually,
Yeah,
they actually
just-
did do it. No, I'm going to go this way because you've said a lot in about.
But I just want to know what's in the reserves, what percentage we have in there, because I never got it, since the audit, we never updated that for 2020.
Give them a minute to look at that. Who had their hand up in regards to the amendment?
oh,
Trustee Chan Miller.
15 minutes.
Hang on.
I was just going to make that point that I didn't think we were supposed to do salaries out of the ARPA fund. That was my point. And I still think we should entertain 3 firefighters immediately.
Trustee Pieper.
Can we take the money out of doing the maintenance for well number 7 for 175,000, since it's
No.
obviously not going to get done this year?
No, it's a separate budget. Utility budget's separate from general fund. No, the answer to that is no.
You don't have to say it so.
It's not, well, it is because it's a whole separate, it's a utility
but you don't have
budget.
to-
So
Oh,
Enterprise.
oh,
further discussion on the motion to amend. Trustee Baum.
My question would be to Trustee Kaminsky, if we're looking at 100,000, why isn't that 200? Why isn't that 300? What's the right number? What's the emergency? What are we?
Going to fund right now because it's changed
In the research.
dramatically last year because we took borrowing out of there.
3
And
million.
we have to see where we're at percentage wise, because in 2021, we had almost 49% of operating budget in that fund, and we surely don't have anything close to that now.
But you may be interested in taking a higher number out of there.
Well, I have to know where we're at.
Yeah.
That's just it.
You're careful, be careful. You impact our Moody's rating, you impact our rate of interest, you
Yeah.
impact the ability to pay it back.
You got to talk to Phil about that or whoever the person is.
So, yeah, how many millions of dollars do we have in the fund? We need to have that data.
He's looking.
Well,
It's
well,
an Excel file. He's got to look through a lot of tabs.
while Matthew is looking, I guess one of the things that I would say about, Moody's and the bond rating agencies is when we issue debt next spring, it will be a challenging call with them because with the public works building, our debt levels have increased significantly. And then seeing the reduction in the reserves, they will have questions about that. I think the key to it is explaining the reasons why, and presenting it as part of a plan. So seeing the reduction because we funded our capital budget out of reserves is something that is easily explained and will not affect our bond rating. And my priority as the administrator tonight is to make sure that we get some assistance for the fire department. And if it means we got to take some of that out of reserves, I will give the best pitch that we can to the rating agencies when we're on the call. But I also do want to caution, that is the kind of thing that does, it is a red flag for them when we're using reserves for ongoing operating expenses. So but we haven't made a habit of it. And that would be my pushback to the rating agencies. We've not made a habit of doing this. And we can't make a habit of it going forward.
First time is never a habit. It's the second time you got to worry about.
Question. Where else can we take it from in the general fund other than roads? Does somebody have a truck or two they can donate?
Those are allocated to the capital fund, you know.
All of them?
Yes.
All of the trucks,
Okay.
correct. So based on, so the 2022 audit's not done, but based on the 2021 year-end balance, plus what we had budgeted for capital projects, we'd have about 4.4 million in undesignated reserves.
Ooh. So that's like 20-some%,
23%.
and that's pretty low for us.
Our policy is, I believe, 15 to 25.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Been
somewhere in
over
that
that.
range. You know,
Yeah,
if-
We haven't been in that range in,
historically, we've been in
9.
the 40% range.
yeah. Well, I mean, I don't have a magic solution, so I'm just going to let my motion flow. And if somebody else has a better idea, that's great.
Further discussion on the motion to amend.
What's the motion?
Motion to
Repeat.
amend was to take 100,000 out of reserves and 100,000 from ARPA. Or the difference, so it matches the 207.
I think that was the proposal and then Terry amended it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. She amended it.
To do, fund 100K out of ARPA to cover the seal coating that.
From the road fund up there,
And
yeah.
100K out of reserves.
Right.
Right.
Instead of taking seal coating down to zero
You'd
practically.
be adding
Yeah.
it back up.
Okay. Yours was to take 100K out of seal coating and 100K out of ARPA. She's taking your seal coating and flipping it over to reserves.
Reserves, leaving the seal coating, because we already cut 100 out of it.
Yep, your ARPA funds from 100K would be providing a seal coating and then 100K out of reserves.
Further discussion, trustee Chan Miller.
Can we use the ARPA funds for personnel?
Yes.
Well, it's a temporary use.
Band-Aid.
It's a Band-Aid.
All right.
That is an eligible use. Would be
Eligible?
Yep, you could do it.
I
I would
thought we
consider it
couldn't.
best
It's
practice.
just not recommended.
Not supposed to.
Further discussion on a motion to amend. No further discussion?
Can we add a third?
You're going to make an amendment to the amendment?
Yes, amend to the amendment.
Last time we did that, we got all confused.
We're confused now.
Clear now.
No, we're not.
Take,
We're not confused now because we're taking 100,000 out of ARPA and 100,000 out of reserves. I think Jan is looking to take more than 100,000
doesn't
out
out
of
of
reserves.
reserves. 200 out of reserves, 1 out of ARPA.
Are you making?
That, I'm making a motion to take 200 out of, and, I'm sorry, what was I gonna say?
ARPA
Ar-
reserves.
Reserves, 200 out of reserves and 100 out of,
Okay, that's your
ARPA.
motion to amend the amendment. Is there a second?
I will second that to get a
third
barometer.
for
To get a
fire,
barometer? Okay,
for the fire.
motion made and seconded, discussion. Mr.
President-
Barometer.
President Walter, if I could just make a comment. Given the option of using general fund reserves or using ARPA funds, it'd be better practice to use ARPA funds as we're obligated to spend those funds by a certain period where we're not obligated to spend general
Right.
fund reserves. So given the choice between general fund reserves and ARPA funds, ARPA funds would be my recommendation.
To switch it then.
Correct.
Just switch it, please.
And that's okay with the second? Thank you.
Sure.
A discussion on that motion to amend the amendment. Reserves. That's correct.
200K for ARPA now, that 100.
No, we don't have to take anything out for the seal coating. It's just 100 out of reserves and 200 out of ARPA is the amend of the amendment.
Roads, that's fine.
Seal coating won't be reduced.
That's correct.
But there's another roads for 750.
Trustee Nyrider.
I can't, sorry. I can't support anything that uses ARPA funds for personnel. I agree with what was said here earlier. But I see the seriousness of it, I do, but I cannot see using ARPA funds for personnel. That's just my feeling.
Further discussion?
It's the barometer.
Oh, no further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Opposed, raise your hands. It's tie.
Opposed.
What did you say, Trustee Pieper?
I'm opposed.
All right, motion fails. Back to the original amendment of 100,000 out of ARPA and 100,000 out of reserves, or just 200,000 out of ARPA. No. So let's back to the motion as no, it hasn't been amendment. We're back to the original amendment. Further discussion? Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
I'm
Two
opposed.
opposed? You're also opposed, Trustee Pieper?
Correct.
Motion passes. John? Did he leave? Oh, he's still here. Any questions? Okay. Next.
Where are we at on the,
Get more tougher than this.
where are we at on the
We-
referendum?
We are now.
Oh, I'm sorry. Wait a minute. Wait.
Wait,
Back to the motion as amended, one further vote, because that was just for the amendment. Any further discussion? The motion is 100,000 out of reserves and 100,000 out of ARPA. Right, it's the amended motion. Further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Aye.
Two opposed. Motion carries. Now.
Now that brings us to the library. And I think as we get into these next few programs, you'll see why this was a really challenging budget for staff to put together and some of the difficult decisions that are before us. We broke the reductions to library budgeting by staff, which is a $40,000 reduction, in programming, which was a $60,000 reduction. And it is before you if there's any action the board would like to take. I also want to point out, we did leave a hard copy. The library did provide some additional information in a memo that was printed out and placed by your seats this evening.
which one's the library document?
The one that says Germantown Community Library.
I got too many things.
This one.
Oh, that
No?
one, okay. I remember seeing that one.
It should be a single sheet of,
Conveniently labeled Germantown Community Library.
It's got too many pages. There it is.
The regular meeting,
Found it.
the library. Found it.
It's in the packet.
Yeah, Chief Snow commingled with.
All right, committee.
Right,
Trustee Nyrider.
I think I made the comment, I don't know if it was the other night or the night before or whatever on the budgets, but I felt that the library, I feel if there's any money left anywhere, that we should look at putting some of this back. And again, I'm not blaming the crafters here of the budget. They did what they had to do. But again, as I said the other night, both library and we're going to talk about recreation next, I'm sure. I see these as direct effects. And when I came in here tonight, I took the handout that Steve or Matthew had given us, and I looked, you had 40,000 for the library part-time, 60,000 for programming. And I circled the library. I won't even say what I did on recreation yet, but I circled $40,000 on the library part-time. Is it possible somewhere that we can find 40,000 to restore and let the library committee or whatever decide how they want to divide that up between part-time or in programming, or put it all in part-time or whatever? But I know it's not right to say it's a fairness issue, but I just think we're making a significant cuts here that are going to be felt considerably. And I think if we can find it somewhere to restore at least 40,000, I think that would be a good start for the library.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So the 40,000 would be for programming or it would be for the hours of operation?
Well, what I did was I circled the 40 for the hours of operation, but I would sooner say, if we could restore 40, let the librarian decide which category she wants to use it in.
Well,
Otherwise, just leave it for the hours and the operation.
actually, if I could just point out that the village board sets the dollars that go to the library. That really is a decision the library board has the authority to make, is how that would be used then to
Okay.
make up the difference.
So I would just be saying restore 40,000 to the library budget. Okay. That's personally what I was thinking.
Trustee Kaminsky?
That wasn't a motion or anything at this point,
No.
was it? Because as we discussed this, I have just a really stupid question here. I'm looking at the ARPA sheet and I know in my head what I want to keep, but I don't remember what's under miscellaneous projects.
Nothing. Those funds are still available. You allocated $100,000 for firefighter, but there's still that
Okay.
funding available.
But I was actually thinking, and now I'm really out of line here, I'm sure, but I was thinking, I agree with trustee Nybrider that I would like to restore something to the library, but I was thinking more in terms of $50,000 and they can spend that wherever they want. And then also going back to recreation, I know we're not talking about that now, but just so I can get my thinking on the table, and authorizing the $60,000 to improve those courts, because that is such a huge, huge thing right now to have those paddle, what do you call it? Those racquetball type courts. Pickleball courts.
Tennis
I
court?
mean, if you drive down by Hauptstrasse Park now, you can't even get parking. There are so many people playing in there.
Like-
But just a comment, that's all it is.
All right. And so the 50,000, you haven't designated where you want it to come from. You just think it should be 50.
I don't believe you'd be allowed to use ARPA funds for those types of activities. You can use ARPA funds for additional personnel and for capital.
You could for the tennis
tennis
courts.
For the tennis
You
courts,
certainly
good,
could.
but to fund the library,
What if they're behind? Why not?
I'd have to double check, but I'd be pretty surprised if you'd be able to. It's typically designated for larger capital projects, additional public safety personnel or personnel in general,
Okay.
not just for general purchasing.
The libraries, I'm usually confusing 60,000, I would say from the ARPA funds for the courts.
Okay, when we get to that, we can talk about that. Trustee Hudson?
So I want to talk about, and I appreciate this discussion. So what are you snacking on, Steve?
Sorry, I blame trustee Miller. She brought in
Treat.
Oh,
candy.
that's, I thought it was.
So I apologize.
Now
No pizza.
I'm completely somewhere
Sorry.
else. Oh, For the library and the rec department budget, were these two budgets cut the same percentage? Was there and I, I want to use the word cut, but was the recommendation reduced by the same percent amount in these two departments?
From their requested budgets?
Yes.
Roughly, library was cut 100,000 from the requested, and recreation was 125,000.
And that's approximately
Approximately
10% each department,
from their
correct?
requested budget, correct?
And so why? And I like Terry's suggestion. Why can't we just say we'll give them 5% back, and if Gil wants to spend it, putting up more pickleball courts, that's great. If Trish wants to buy more libraries, that's great. Why do we have to designate how the rec department would spend that money
It's not,
and not designate how the library, unless we're going to use ARPA funds?
Correct.
correct,
Correct.
but you have to find that money within the general fund.
I understand that. I understand.
Okay,
That's all. Thank you.
right. Trustee Jan Miller.
I'd like to make a statement as a library board member. In Tricia's, if you think back, Tricia did a presentation I'm going to say last week or a couple days ago. It's all a blur. And the library has to put together a budget, and then it gets we get 1/3 of our funding from the county, Washington County. So on 100, I'm using round numbers, on $1 million budget, 750,000 comes from the village. And the balance comes from, or 1/3, so whatever that is. And 300,000 comes from the Washington County. So 10% is pretty high, because the funding is not a full $1 million from the village. So when we saw the budget, when the library board saw the budget that came back, we were very disappointed because they wanted us to cut $100,000. So we came back and we took a vote and we said, we do not want to cut $60,000. We want the village to find $60,000 so that we do not have to reduce the hours from 59, which is already system-wide low amount of hours that the library is actually open. The average is about 62, 63. So we've been below average, and it would take us down to 52 hours. In addition to that, it would eliminate one part-time person. So we were requesting the 60,000, which is about half what Trustee Nyreither and Kamensky were talking about. So that is the ask from the library board. And I don't understand why we couldn't take that out of the ARPA funds, because it's the library. The library is a building, so it's kind of like a building fund. Can you answer, Matt?
That's a question for Matt.
Yeah.
You couldn't designate, you couldn't just say, I'm gonna use ARPA funds, to buy new chairs and things like that, or to fund programs. That wasn't the intent of the federal bill. You can use it for capital projects like we have before. You can use it, as we did about a year and a half ago, for premium pay. You can use it to hire additional personnel, but you can't use it just to fund day-to-day activities.
Well, what about the 20,000 part-time person and programming and materials?
No, those won't be eligible uses, as those are not additional personnel. You can use it to hire additional personnel, but not to supplement.
We don't have this person anymore.
So
it would be like an additional person.
That's the point of clarification that I am seeking also. Where it says we're cutting a part-time person. we're not cutting a part-time person. We're just not hiring someone, correct?
Right.
So we're not laying off or reducing a person's hours for this $20,000. We don't have this person on staff
Doesn't
and we're
exist.
just not hiring them. Is that not correct?
That's
I
correct.
believe that's correct, but it's not a change in FTEs that were created for the library. We're not adding FTEs to the library. You know, we're not creating new positions that we could use to fund ARPA.
The phrase that the federal government uses in looking at grants like this is supplanting. And what you're not allowed to do under ARPA is to supplant, use ARPA to supplant what things that you normally had funded. So whether the position is filled or vacant, it's been in the budget. It was not a new requested position from the library. Is my understanding. It was
It's a position that's now vacant that we are not rehiring that position.
right, but it was
Thank you.
previously budgeted. So yes.
Thank you.
So what why can't it be for programming and materials? That's tangible.
But those are operating expenses that had been previously budgeted, and you're not allowed to supplant village funds with ARPA funds. So the purpose of the grant was to, fund additional capital programs or expand programs, but the federal government is saying you can't use it to basically replace what you had been funding with village funds in the past.
Otherwise, you just take your whole general fund budget and throw it at ARPA.
That's what I was about to do.
So
Trustee Hudson, if Trustee Jan Miller is complete, I'll recognize you. Jan Miller, you're,
I'm okay now.
Okay.
But I may call a library person to come up. Okay.
all right, Trustee Hudson.
So are we talking about just the library or are we talking about Park and Rec? Because I don't want to.
We're talking about the library.
I don't want to shorten this meeting if I don't have to.
That's good. I think everybody's on the same page then.
So are we just talking about library here?
Yes, we are.
Then I'll wait. Thank you.
Did you want to?
I mean, I'm sure I know the
address
answer is no.
anything?
Okay, Matt,
Trustee Kaminsky.
your doctor no tonight for all the ARPA funds. I was thinking about, like, there's $40,000 in maintenance plan for the library. We can't squeak that one through, can we? And just sub it out.
You got to find it in the general fund somewhere.
So we can't. I'm hearing a no.
Yes, you are correct. You know, if you were going to do an additional capital project for the library, you could use ARPA funds for that, but you couldn't.
Oh.
You couldn't.
So the sump pumps aren't a capital project
The condenser?
or the new,
Oh, you're right.
there's a couple sump pumps and, yeah, that they were going to put in.
Replacing that. DPW.
You probably couldn't capitalize that. It's not expensive enough.
40,
It's 26,000 is not.
Yeah, it was under 25.
okay,
Right.
all right.
Trustee Jan Miller.
We are creating a patio. Can we use the money to create the patio? That is tangible.
Is that project, in the sense pouring concrete and things such as that?
Yeah.
If it's over a certain dollar
Lots.
threshold, you could. It would be considered a capital
So-
project.
It's over 100,000, I believe.
But there's no village funds for that.
No, ARPA.
Or ARPA funds are yes, ARPA funds can be used for that.
Correct.
It's already designated through ARPA funds, isn't it?
I
No.
believe so.
But then they couldn't use any of that money to do what you really want to do, which is extend the hours again and hire people, because you can't use it for that.
For one,
It doesn't really help us.
it's 1 year fix.
Just
It's a
when you
1 year
get your
fix.
patio on it.
If you're taking the money that's already budgeted for the patio, is that in capital or is it in
No, we don't have it in there.
general fund?
I don't believe that's a village project. I believe that's a library project.
It's not the village project. It's the library project.
Oh, then no.
Yeah, no.
If
Where can we get the funds?
From general fund.
Okay.
Remove something from the general fund that's worth it the same amount that you're trying to put back into the library.
Good Lord.
Not much in here. It's lean and mean.
That somebody else isn't gonna object to.
Are there any more trees? Just-
That would be good.
We could cut trees down that are planted.
I think that's what's
We're
going
doing that
on
already.
now.
Oh, that's right. We are.
That's, yeah,
That chipper.
that's hot.
That's a chipper.
$93,000 stump grinder.
Trustee Rick Miller. I think they're done for now. They're looking.
Right.
Can we look? Can I look and come back?
Yeah, right now I got, yes.
Thank
Trustee
you.
Rick Miller.
I'm gonna be the bad guy here,
Okay.
but I do not want to change the budget for the library or the rec department. I think it was very well done. I think when you look at it, and you gotta look at it this way, right? We have necessities. Public works, public safety are necessities. Unfortunately, the library and the rec department are not necessities. They're nice to have. They're fantastic to have.
You're right.
But when we have to look at it, this is the place that we have to get tight. And I think the library did a great job with adjusting what they needed to do. And, you know, reducing the hours a little bit and reducing some staff. I get that. It's gonna hurt. I understand that.
Been there before.
I think the rec department did a fantastic job as well by, you know, really looking at the budget and seeing how they could finance everything. So I'm sorry, but I'm not gonna support any change.
Rusty Baum.
But all these things put back in, we have to get the referendum passed, because then you can free up the other money that we've just shuffled over to get police and fire somewhat satisfied.
But you had to also reduce other areas in order to get it. It's not money that was available through the general fund. You had to
Correct.
pay or borrow from Peter to pay Paul on that one.
So if you want to try and get some of this stuff back in, we need to free up money, and the tax increase for the police and fire department is gonna help do that.
Or you, like you said, look for some other area in the general fund that everybody would agree to reducing to put it back in. Trustee Kaminsky.
I think trustee Rick Miller is right. I think I am sitting here feeling like it should be Christmas and that we can have all these things.
ARPA's.
And, you know, we all told ourselves 2 months ago, this is going to be a super tight year, super difficult budget. And the reality is, for a year, we're going to have to probably live with what we got. I just spent the last however many minutes going through line item by line item where there's any amount of money. This budget is so lean. What do we want to cancel? Legal services? I mean, and that's what
He's
it's
the only
down
one not
to.
here.
I mean, that's what it's down to. It's crazy lean to come up with the amount of money that we're talking about, like my $50,000 for the library. It would be peeling things painfully off from an extremely lean budget. And so I am going to concur that this is not the year to mess with it. And I'm going to have to say, I agree with Rick Miller, that I'm going to support the budget as it is, all the hard work that went into it, all the sacrifice that went into it. Thank you. And we have to live with this for a year.
Minus some of the changes we've already made.
Well, and I'd also like to point out all the other outstanding topics, to me, they're moot because of that, because we're not going to find this money anywhere.
You're talking about recreation and seal coating?
Yep, all of them.
What about the 60,000 for the tennis court? That I think you can find.
And that can come out of ARPA, that's all we have to work with.
That could come out of our policy.
Trustee Hudson.
So, I understand what Rick is saying. I have a respectfully a different philosophy. These things that we're cutting, the library, the rec department, the parks department, that is our community. So yeah, obviously public safety, the roads are always most important. But then we have these services that we offer as a village. And those services are what make us a community. And 1 year is fine. But what we can't do is cut and cut and cut, because eventually you're not cutting away fat, you're cutting away bone. And when you start going to that extent, you're ruining your own community. And I would just caution that this board needs to be very aware of what we are doing when we are talking about these services for our residents.
There's no motion. Trustee Kaminsky.
I agree with you, and it hurts. And yet the reality is, we didn't create this problem. It's,
Yeah, we did.
how did we create this problem? We didn't create inflation. We didn't make all the gas bills and everything else we're seeing in this budget, which are up hugely.
The same way this board created our water utility problem
Oh, that-
here.
that's- no,
That was,
different.
That's totally different, totally different. This, we knew was going to be a hard year.
Like it was in 2008.
And we saw it coming economically. You show me one family living not just in our community or anywhere that doesn't agree that this is a hard year and they have to make tough budget choices with the cost of everything being crazy right now, including all of our utility bills, all of our gasoline, everything's up. When you look at this budget compared to last year, it's significantly up. Inflation's killing us.
Yeah.
That is a big part of this.
The only thing, mostly what we've done as a village board that impacts this general fund budget would be the increases to the salaries to make us more competitive with what's happening out there. I mean, we've chewed up some money on that. I'd agree with that for a good reason. Trustee Chan Miller.
I just wanted to agree with trustee Hudson. These are community places, the parks and the recreation that we offer, and also the library. And I just want to give you an example. On Saturday, the 21st, we closed the library and we had a haunted house. In the afternoon, we had just kids and their parents walking through, and it wasn't too scary. And in the evening, we turned off the lights and we had actors, and it was really, really scary. So in the afternoon, we had 560 people come through, and in the evening, we had another 360. We had over 900 people come through that library. And if you don't think it's not used, or if you think that the staff doesn't work hard bringing people in and being creative, you're misinformed. And I feel like I hope all the offerings that the library has are going to be cut. The hours are cut, the programming's cut, and we're not going to be able to make the revenues that we need. And the revenues that the circulation that we produce or pass through is based on our income, the third of our income coming from Washington County. So it's a snowball effect. And I think that we need to support our library so that we can support our residents and our community.
No motion.
So I'm asking that we find 50,000 in the general fund to support the
You
library.
can't make it miscellaneous and then put it on someone to find. If you're going to make a motion, hold on. If you're going to make a motion to find the 40 or the 60 or any variation thereof, part of your motion has to be where it's coming from. Otherwise, and that keeps it in a balanced budget. So if you're going to make that motion, you have to also add the second part of, and it will come from this fund. Otherwise, it won't be a motion. And I won't ask for a second, nor will I entertain it. It has to be within that venue.
Understood.
I'll make a motion to accept the budget as presented at this time.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion on that motion.
I do have one question. Would that include $60,000 for the all power tennis courts?
That's the rec department yet.
No, he's taking the whole thing.
He's taking the whole thing. He's taking the whole
thing.
thing.
As we've taken it this far tonight, yes, that's what he's proposing, because the next step would be to look at the proposed budget notice, which would then, right, the referendum, but the next step with the budget would be then to have it posted as it's been discussed and voted upon tonight. That's what his motion is bringing it to.
I'd like to amend the motion to include the alt power resurfacing out of ARPA funds for $60,000.
Second that.
And when we say resurfacing, do we have to specify if it's pickleball and or tennis?
Please specify pickleball.
All right, I will. I'll specify a dual purpose court.
Okay,
All right.
and that's approved by the second.
That's fine with the second. I'm trying to get clarification from. So you get 2 pickleball courts.
Okay, so out of the 2 courts that are there, 1 would be pickleball? Okay. So you'd resurface it all, 2 would still be tennis and 1 would be pickleball, which would allow, you get 2 courts out of 1 tennis court for pickleball. Okay, got it. All right, further discussion. Trustee Nyrider.
So what, trustee Baum's motion then is to include cuts for the library and recreation as outlined on this sheet.
And the seal coating, that's correct.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Further discussion on the motion to amend. No further discussion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Trustee Pieper, how do you vote?
Aye.
Okay, now back to the motion as amended. Further discussion. Trustee Kaminsky.
So that brings our ARPA fund, that $571,000 down by 160. What did we originally earmark any of this for?
So if you're looking at the table in front of you, each line item is what those were earmarked for. There's premium pays, street
Oh, yeah,
trees.
that I see, but I mean, then we have the leftover
Miscellaneous.
miscellaneous projects.
So essentially what I did was I took the total outstanding
Mhm.
and then allocated it to some suggested projects. That miscellaneous was allocated amongst all of those, street trees.
So it's still left over to be used for anything.
Correct.
Um,
I didn't segregate it by bucket. I just put the total amount outstanding with the assumption that you might not want to use it for roads, you might want to use it for something else, and just to give you a flat dollar amount of funds available.
So we could use it for roads and offset borrowing on roads.
Yes,
Much of that miscellaneous.
571 minus 160.
About 400.
That's 100 out of there.
But just as a thought, for discussion, we could offset almost $400,000 in road borrowing. We're going to borrow for roads.
Yes. But there's already, no, we do not. There's already 700,
We could go home.
but you
Yeah.
have 750 in ARPA street paving already, but that's another discussion.
Okay, good.
Further discussion on the motion as amended. No further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Repeat the motion, please.
Motion is to accept the budget as presented with the amendment to add the 60,000 from ARPA funds to pave the all power tennis courts.
Trustee Nyrather?
No.
Trustee Baum?
Aye.
Trustee Jan Miller?
No.
Trustee Hudson?
Aye.
Trustee Pieper?
No.
Trustee Rick Miller?
Aye.
Trustee Kaminsky?
Aye.
And President Walter?
Aye. Motion passes 5-3. Next item is item 5, 2024 Public Safety Referendum, Alternative Public Safety Staffing Referendum Questions. Village Administrator.
And I think we made a lot of progress on this topic already as part of the budget discussions, but there are several different options for moving forward with a referendum. And I think, as I understand it, from the budget discussions, and this is kind of a question, I guess, I'm posing to the village board, is you would be looking for a referendum that would add 4 additional police officers, and then a question would be either 6 or 10 additional firefighters. And based on the feedback from the village board tonight, what I would recommend is that we bring back to the November 6th meeting draft language for the board to review. So you have an opportunity to review it, see if you like it, because November 20th would be the last date that we would really have to decide to move forward with the referendum.
Would it be the board's recommendation to go to the full staffing of the fire department, or something less than that you can get within a year or two?
What do we have in there now for the 601?
That's 6 firefighters. And then the thought behind the 6 firefighters is that would be about what we could hire and bring on board in 1 year. It would get the fire department a significant way towards what they need for full staffing. And then,
The next 5 years or so, hopefully.
well, they really,
Yeah.
the 12 is a real number of what they need now, but we could add 1 or 2 firefighters and incrementally in future budgets.
Okay, because I think we have to be careful with this referendum. Obviously, we want it to pass. And let's look at the successful referendums that have happened around the state, of which I think there were 3 or 4 that I'm aware of in the past year and a half. And let's see what that magic number was, because it seems to be right around 1 million to 1.1. And there's a magic number here that people will say, okay, what does it mean for my house? And they're going to go for it if it's in that framework. I think maybe to bring that back would be important.
So you
And
would go
what can we afford with that, knowing, pardon?
Then you're looking at about 6 and 4?
Probably.
Okay.
Whatever, I don't know what that number is. You guys do. But just take a look, because it's, I think, very critical that this passes. And the economy will eventually improve and
Trustee
a lot of
Hudson?
money again.
So, yeah, I don't think the critical nature of the referendum can be debated. My question is there a way to make this more palatable to people? I mean, can we phase this in over 3 years instead of an immediate, because we know we're not going to be able to hire all this personnel in 1 year, or at least I don't think we will. So is it wiser to phase this in over X period of time and phrase the question that way? Or is it better to say these needs now, whole ball of wax?
Well, first of all, just to answer the trustee Kaminsky's question, and Matthew did put together a chart that runs all this through. 6 firefighters and 4 police officers would be $1,063,000. So just over that $1 million mark. Yes, the referendum can be phased in. So, and in fact, 2 of the examples that I gave were one of the examples I gave did exactly that, where it phased it in over 2 years and just adjusted the levy.
Do those have a greater likelihood of passing?
I think people have trouble understanding it more, but that's just my opinion. They may have trouble understanding its impact to the
Yeah,
levy, but that's just an opinion.
Yeah, there's statistics. I mean, there's,
Yeah, and I don't have statistics on that. We have had conversations with just getting feedback from from Miller Communications, for example, when they were talking to us about providing communication services, gave us some information about referendums, not specific statistics. Overall, the success rate for public safety referendums is very high. There are only a handful in the past year, 18 months that have not passed. And there have been a couple that have had phased in increases, but generally what we've seen is that the questions are asking for the full amount. One thing I could do before November 6th is Port Washington and Cedarburg are going forward with referendums this spring, and I could see if they've adopted any language and what that looks like.
No statistics either, Matthew?
Not as it relates to success between full amount and split levies.
Thank you.
One thing to consider, and I want to ask John's opinion on this too. If the referendum asks for 6 firefighters and 4 additional police officers, that becomes active in 2025, correct?
Yes.
From what we learned yesterday through the TID presentation, TID 8 can be closed in 2029. 11 years or after it was started in 2018, it can be looked at as possibly closing in 2029. That would bring a significant amount of money to the general fund. Can the 6 officers, and I know this is a projection and maybe a tougher question, with the 6 additional firefighters, could you carry that for 4 years, or would we need to phase them in through those 4 years? It'd be, yeah, but they're asking for 12, so it's 10 total.
Right.
You need 4 more.
So they would need to be coming in before then.
Okay, before 2029, the
Correct.
additional 6.
Correct.
All right, so then it would, in your opinion, it would be better to ask for the full 10 with the 4 officers, then ask for 6, and then try to find funding as other things come online from 2025 to 2029.
I would believe it'd be more beneficial to ask for the full.
Okay.
Do you have all the equipment you need, John? I mean, do we need another firehouse? I hope we don't need another ladder truck.
Ambulance.
As far as
Ambulance would
the
be okay.
individual equipment that we have, we do have enough individual equipment. Staffing for places to house all the people, we would need to work on somewhere to do that. And there are some ideas that I have that we could discuss at a different time.
Does it involve firehouse number 1?
Doesn't necessarily involve that, but it could involve combining a police station and fire station,
Yes, public safety building. is
especially with some
always
savings
been
without
in
a
my-
dispatch center.
And I would rather
Thank you.
discuss than one or the other. Okay, thank you, John. Appreciate that. Anything else on referendum?
That is all the feedback that we needed on the referendum, so we'll have that back before the board on the 6th.
So item 6 then would be a motion to approval of publication.
Mr. President,
On the 6th, right? I have,
Trustee Nyrider.
can we just go back to the referendum? Just one question I have, sorry. If we decide, and it sounds like we're finally going to go ahead with a referendum in April, are we going to will we use again a marketing PR company or whatever to help us sell that? And if so, where would that fit in the budget for 2024?
Well, I would recommend that we do
Yeah.
use a firm, and actually, I believe we'd need to find the money in the 2023 budget.
Okay.
And that would be something I'll work with the finance director to find some money for that, to fund that in 2023.
Would we bid that out again? That's the,
It's a board's decision. I
That's
mean,
yeah, that is a board's
I'm not
decision.
saying the company didn't do a good job, but
Yeah. Yeah, I think we could go through a relatively quick, informal RFP process to see who all was interested and what the different costs might be, and bring that to the board and have that on November 20th. I think we could have that ready to go.
okay.
Anything else on referendum? Trustee Chan Miller?
Could you explain what you mean by an informal RFP? Because I thought we had to do formal RFPs,
Well,
bids.
actually, legally, we only have to do bids, true bids for public work documents, for public works projects, I should say. When I talk about an informal RFP, I would put together probably like a one-page summary of what we're looking for and send that out to several of the companies that we've talked to in the past. And and ask for a quick response, not a complete lengthy proposal, as opposed to what I would call a formal RFP, which would get into much more detail and have more specifics. And I probably would look to advertise or find some other way of publicizing that we're looking for this business, and give a longer period of time for companies to learn about the potential work and respond to it. The reason that I would suggest an informal proposal process in this case is because of the time constraints and trying to get that information complete and out in a timely manner for the April referendum, I think would be really critical.
And why couldn't our staff do this? I'm asking the question. We're going to be hiring a
Well,
deputy clerk, another deputy clerk. Just, I'm asking.
I think the first answer to that is that we don't have the expertise. And the second is that I don't think that we have the amount of time to dedicate it that you would get from one of these communication firms.
Okay, anything else on referendum? All right, then, item 6, approval of publication of 2024 proposed budget notice.
In your packet is a proposed budget notice for November 20th. This was just a proposed draft. With the changes made tonight, the numbers will change slightly, but we're just looking for approval to send this for publication ahead of the November 20th public hearing.
Motion to be in order.
Trying to find it.
Back page.
I will make a motion to submit the public hearing notice as presented.
Second that.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion?
Can I ask one follow-up on this? We are required by state statute to publish this. For us, it's in the Journal Sentinel. Another option, we could also publish this in the Germantown Express. And wanted feedback from the board if that's something like us to.
Absolutely.
Okay, we will do that as well then.
I think that has
Need a
more
motion?
circulation in the journal.
It does. Do you need a
Oh,
motion?
we have to do the Journal Sentinel. We may do, and we can do, and we'll do the Germantown Express.
Do you need a motion or anything?
I don't think, no.
Okay.
All
Duly
right,
noted.
any further discussion on the motion to go to public notice? We'll do roll call vote, please.
Trustee Nyrather?
Aye.
Trustee Baum?
Aye.
Trustee Jan Miller?
Aye.
Trustee Hudson?
Aye.
Trustee Peeper?
Aye.
Trustee Rick Miller?
Aye.
Trustee Kaminsky? And Village President Walter?
Aye. Next meeting date, if needed. I would say no, because we're going out to publication. Does everybody agree? Next committee of the whole meeting date is what it's asking for.
Committee of the
September of 24.
I like that. I like that. So then the public hearing would be November, I don't have a calendar.
November 20th.
November 20th would be for the public hearing and for the village board vote on the 2024 budget. Anything else? If not, we are adjourned. Thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you all for watching, and have a good night.